Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Chad Stevens, welcome, my man.
No, I'm excited.
I'm excited. What's your morning routine like? I'm curious.
So my morning routine's a little intense. When I get up, the first thing I do is just try and not pick up any electronic device, which is pretty difficult for me. The first thing I want to do, because I go to bed so early, I turn my phone off, so I'm anxious to see, who's called me and text messages, things like that. But I try and keep it to the side. And
When you say turn your phone off, do you mean off?
Off. Yeah, I'll totally turn it off.
Whoa.
So
How can people reach you if there's an emergency?
Call my wife.
Oh yeah. What time do you turn the phone off?
No work. Around 7.
You turn your phone off, power off.
Yeah. Well, I'm
7.
in bed by probably 8 o'clock.
Oh wow.
So that leads straight into why it's hard not to immediately turn it on, see what's happening.
Yeah.
But instead of looking at it, what I try and do is I read a devotional, and I try and just sit there and just have like kind of a peaceful, not trying to be cheesy, but sort of a spiritual moment, just relaxing. When it's warmer, I'll go out on the porch. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I turned my sauna on. So I'm waiting on the sauna to heat up. And then once that's done, it's probably 20, 30 minutes in, I'll go get in the sauna.
Let me back you up a little bit. What time are you getting up?
5:30.
5:30.
Yeah.
Crawling out of bed, turning the sauna on.
Uh-huh.
Having a devotional, inside or outside?
Depending on the weather.
Depending on the weather. Yeah, okay. All right, got it. Continue.
So then by that time I get in the sauna, I'd go through, the first 10 minutes of it is pure meditation. Sometimes I use an app, sometimes I don't, just depending on how I'm feeling that morning. And the last 10 minutes are typically painful. You're just trying to fight through. And, a lot of people look at the sauna as, I'm just going to get in there and kind of get warmed up, get a light sweat on. For me, it's like more of a mental thing. I'm really trying to push it. And, my last minute there, it's really like hand on the door, can't wait to get out. And I track that. Then after I sauna, I immediately go to the shower, and I'll take a cold shower. Pretty brutal in the winters here.
When you say cold, do you mean cold? Like all the way cold?
Yeah, all the way cold.
All the way cold?
Yeah, all the way cold. Some mornings, like this morning, I go in fully cold, and then I'll just, reward myself at the end and turn it up to warm right before I get out.
Okay.
So by that time, I'm pretty engaged, pretty awake and alert.
Have you had any coffee or tea at this point? Yeah.
Yes. I left that part out. When I'm doing the while the sauna's warming up, that's when I'll take coffee and just go out and just try and relax and just try and connect. And that's when I'll drink coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then sauna, shower, and then is it to work from there, or is your routine over at that point?
No. So I also do a breathing routine every morning. It's pretty basic, but I find it really, really helpful. I test myself in the truck because I drive the same route every morning, and let me just explain what it is. So it's basically I'll take 3 rounds of 30 deep breaths in and try and make my breath circular. No pause in between the inhalation and exhalation. I'll go 30 reps in, and then I'll hold my breath blowing all the oxygen, all the air out. I'll hold my breath and see how long I can go. So I started at the same point at the top of my driveway every morning, and then I try and make it like I'm up to now trying to get past Old Hickory and Charlotte Pike. So I'm like really pushing.
Accounting for the 30 breaths in and out, and then the breath hold.
Yes.
And so obviously introducing some strategy there, the longer you can make your breaths, those 30 breaths in and out, that's going to really help with getting farther.
So it's really the only portion that's extending my drive from the competitive angle is I pause the app because I'm on an app because the app's structured locked in at like a 8-minute window.
Okay.
So it'll tell you when to take a breath in when your hold is over, and I pause it. So you have the ability to pause it there to extend it that way.
Okay, so the only way you can extend your drive is from the actual breath hold itself. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're cycling through that 3 times? Because that seems like a lot to me. 30 breaths in and out seems like a lot.
So I would say probably, I've been doing this for over a year, but I would bring like my niece or my wife or let them experience it. And it's pretty difficult. It doesn't sound hard, but it's pretty intense, the effect that it has on your body, because I think we've gotten so used to, the shallow breaths, and we don't really think about it. So for them to do it and for new people to do it, it's challenging. And it sounds really simple, but if you're to go through the process and attempt it, I think that it definitely has an impact on you that's not easy.
Yeah. What app are you using? And that app, I'm curious on, you mentioned meditation. I think you mentioned an app for that too. Maybe I missed that, but I'm curious on the app for meditation, and then what's the app for the breathing?
So the breathing, it's actually through Wim Hof. I don't know if you recognize the name. So he has an app, but I choose to use he's got an Instagram post that I just continue to look at there.
Like the same one?
Saved. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got it saved on my Instagram, and I'll just play that every morning. The meditation apps that I use, I started out with Headspace. I think that one's a pretty consistent, pretty easy one, especially for beginners. And then I've also thrown in, and I still use Headspace from time to time, depending on the morning, but then I've also introduced Insight Timer, which is a really cool app because it's got just multiple different people that come in, and they have different meditations, like morning meditations, spiritual meditations, sleeping app meditations. I mean, there's just really there's a lot to choose from, a lot of diversity there. It's a free app, which is really cool.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Matt Clark with Churchill Mortgage? He's the chief operating officer and CFO at Churchill Mortgage, and I think Churchill Mortgage is the second biggest mortgage company in America. They're big. They're based in Brentwood.
Oh, wow.
And he was on the podcast a while ago, and he has a very particular morning routine and evening routine. It sounds very similar. He didn't sauna, but it's very, very structured, and he gets up early as well. That seems to be a common thread with high-performing people. And I'm particularly curious because what the people don't know is that I do, which is that you're a high-performing CrossFit athlete. I mean, you're one of the, let's just be honest, you're one of the best in our gym.
Thank you.
It's well,
pushing 40, so I'll take that.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I thought you were over 40.
No.
Okay.
No, I'll be 39 next month.
Oh,
so.
you're okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, then I'm 30. I'm about to be 36. So, sauna, is it traditional or infrared?
Traditional.
It sounded traditional the way you're talking.
Yeah.
So 20 minutes?
It depends on the heat. So the sauna that I have, it's a nice sauna, but I have it in my garage. So depending on the outside temp, it could play a role in how long it takes to get up to temperature. So I try and get it up to around 180 at a minimum.
Okay.
But sometimes I'll get in just a little anxious and it's below 170. And so in those sessions, I'm in there 30 plus. So I keep track of the time. I have to track everything to compete with myself. Mm-hmm. I think that sort of leads in with the CrossFit thing too, but I track my sauna sessions too. So I look at it as a way to competing with myself. And there's some mornings where I'm in there for 40 minutes. There's some mornings where I'm in there for 15 because the temperature is just really, really how intense the temperature is. And it's funny because I was thinking this morning when I was in there of how I'm trying to track what I think the temperature is based off of the heat going through my nose. Without looking at the temperature, I'm trying to guess it just right.
So you guess, you'll feel the heat and then look at the temperature and see how close you are?
I'm like,
it's like telling the time.
I'm like, oh, that's 190 right there. I look at it. Yeah.
That's a 192 right there. I can tell that.
Yeah.
Does your wife sauna as well?
She does. She's a big bath person.
Okay.
Similar in the benefits to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But,
There is some similar benefits there I've been hearing.
Yeah. So
if it's hot, obviously. How long have you had the sauna?
Probably a year and a half.
Okay.
Before that, I went to. There was a athletic center off of Hillsborough Pike, some close to Belmead, that area over there. I would go there. Literally had the membership solely for the sauna. That was the only purpose that I use it for. But having your own, if you can afford it, it's definitely, because I can keep it really clean. I'm not relying on the
exactly.
So,
and did you look into infrared versus traditional, or did you not really look into the infrared?
I did, because infrared is, I think, the easier one to buy. Just
I think so.
Going on to websites and different
and run
suppliers.
Right. It's a little easier to just turn on and go.
Yeah, it's just it's easier, but all the data that I looked at, I couldn't find anything on infrared as much as we could traditional. The studies coming out of Finland that they had that they followed 400 people for 20 years doing the sauna and finding the benefits there is all based on traditional.
Right.
So and related to the heat shock proteins and release of it.
Mm-hmm.
So my brain is more geared towards the stress aspect of it. I don't get in for pleasure. I get in to really try and stress my body.
Yep.
And so I think traditional is just a better fit for me.
Yeah, I could see that. I know Joe Rogan and Dr. Rhonda Patrick both. Well, I know certainly Rogan, and I think Dr. Rhonda Patrick's big fan of traditional.
Yeah.
And but then I had Candace Bruder on, who owns Pure Sweat Sauna here in Nashville. A couple locations. She's franchising now. A really great company and a really great brand. She's done a good job with it. And so she has 1 or 2 franchises now, but she would franchise anywhere really in the country, I believe. And she only has full spectrum infrared saunas. And I did that for the month of August, and I just did it unlimited. So I went every single day, 7 days a week. And then had another, what was his name? Dr. Reisman, Stephen Reisman?
Stephen Reisman.
Dr. Stephen Reisman. He's in Brentwood, and he is a fascinating guy, and he's big into the holistic health space. And I love what he's doing, and he's a big fan of infrared sauna also, in particular. So, I'm hearing like kind of both sides. We want to get one here. There's a couple of, I think there's space here to have them over there. And I was leaning towards infrared because that seemed easier to buy. It seemed easier to plug in and go. And it's what I was doing at Pure Sweat was 145 degrees for 45 minutes. What I kind of like about the traditional is it's hotter and a little bit shorter. But the 145 degrees for 45 minutes is not pleasure for me. It's all I can do to stay in there for that 45, 50 minutes.
Sure. And from what I know, I'm by no means an expert, but from what my understanding is with the infrared is that it actually penetrates deeper, raising your core temperature.
Yes.
So, I would imagine that 145 there in an infrared's pretty intense.
Yeah. I felt like, I'm curious if you feel that the sauna helps your CrossFit performance, because you've been doing CrossFit for some time, and then, so you've owned the sauna for a year, give or take, but you said you were doing sauna even before that. I felt like there was a couple of workouts in August that when I was doing sauna every day, I did a little bit better on that workout than I maybe should have. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt like the sauna helped improve my performance. Have you noticed that at all? Do you think the sauna helps you improve your CrossFit performance?
I do think that I saw a slight benefit there. The thing with me is that I'm constantly crafting, trying to optimize my performance. And I do so many things in conjunction with each other. It's hard to really pinpoint that was the source of it. It's more of like an overall, what I've been doing, how I've been implementing multiple different things to see if that increases my performance all, and then slightly tweaking things. But I think the science supports the fact that the sauna and, specifically the traditional and the release of the heat shock proteins definitely can have an impact on your performance. I think Rhonda Patrick has has some good commentary on that. I know she's a big runner, and she talks about how the sauna helps her on her run. She can go further. So it's really interesting. But I think if you were to ask me point blank, yes or no, I think definitely it's a positive.
Interesting.
It definitely helps performance.
Do you ever sleep past 5:30? Say weekdays.
Very rarely. I don't have an alarm. I get up. And some mornings, with time change, not so much time change, but now that the mornings are darker, the sun's not up as fast, I can go to like 6.
Okay.
But I'm slowly back, and then because we just saw where it's darker in the mornings, and so my body will transition and get back to 5:30.
Interesting. So it like cheats a little bit and then catches on and goes back to. Man, that's interesting. No alarm clock. It's just your body's rhythm. It's fascinating. What time are you like heading out the door? Then jumping in your truck.
So I don't really have an exact time that I want to be in the office.
Okay.
I'm really focused on that morning routine. Like I said, with the sauna, I'm not trying to rush that process where it's like, oh man, it took an extra 10 minutes on the sauna to heat up. I push through. I want to stay in an extra 10 minutes and compounding, and I don't rush it. So I'm typically out the door by 7.
Okay. Okay. It's not late. Speaking of not rushing that, I think it might wind up being a lifetime memory because I still remember it now. And this was probably when I was 15 years old, but, grew up in manufacturing. We built storage sheds. And as a kid, like I worked there as much as I could because I really liked it. And I remember one summer I was working there and, the foreman at the time was a guy named Curtis Stolfus, and he came. I mean, he's the guy in charge and of the shop. And I think we would start at like 6 a.m. or something. And he came in late. It was like an hour and a quarter. Like it was fairly late. And everyone's giving him a hard time. I was like, what's going on? He was like, I missed my alarm clock, slept in a little bit, got up, had my devotions, had my breakfast like normal, and came to work. Like in his mind, that was an acceptable thing because he slept in. He was still going to go through his morning routine basically and then come to work, as opposed to, oh crap, I missed my alarm clock. Just grab something out and just run to work right away. And that kind of stuck. Like he has something that works for him in the morning. The mistake was sleeping in, but just because he made that mistake doesn't mean he's going to like ruin, sacrifice his routine.
Yeah.
What do you believe? So you must believe something to be true to have that amount of discipline. And that's, I guess, what's a little bit interesting to me because I've had that amount of discipline at certain stages of life and I don't have it now. Like I don't have that kind of robust morning routine. If I think back to like, I guess what I believe to be true back then, I definitely had a little bit more discipline, more, I wouldn't say hope for the future necessarily. I have that now, but like I guess I believe different things to think that amount of discipline is going to be worthwhile and the benefits are going to be there. Like what do you believe to be true to put in that amount of discipline?
So I think the obvious answer for me is that it's proven to have benefits for me. I've wrestled with an extreme temper and just very aggressive in work, probably in my early 30s, late 20s. And there was just sort of paradigm shift. I remember I went to a men's retreat one weekend. I guess it was probably back in 2015. And it's funny because I remember being at the gym and just having an awful day. And I was supposed to go on the retreat that Friday, and it was a weekend-long men's retreat. And I remember just being so agitated and aggressive at the gym. I threw a water bottle across. This was at Forte.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I just threw a water bottle across the gym. I was mad at everybody. And I'm like, I'm not going on this. But I ended up going. My wife talked me into going. She's like, look, you committed to it. Your friend's one of the hosts there. And I was like, I'm not going. It's just out in the middle of the woods with 20 strangers that I don't know. But I did that, and it was really just a weekend of no phones, no electronics, no TV. And, 15, 20 strangers there. It was really just connecting and talking and meditating. And I left that. I remember driving home that Sunday and thinking to myself, it's like, there's something to this. Like, I feel different. Like I remember it's almost like I was removed from myself, looking back at my actions on that Friday and thinking of how ridiculous I was. Like, why am I getting upset about this stuff? And so ever since that weekend, I've really tried to make a conscious effort to stay in that place of positivity. And, you know, at this point, I don't know that I could go back away from that disciplined lifestyle. I can't imagine what my morning would be like if I just woke up, had coffee, turned my phone on, and then hopped in the truck and went to work.
Right.
My gut tells me it would not be a productive day.
Yes.
So that's why I believe so firmly in a structured, intentional would probably be the best word that I have an intentional morning.
Yep.
And it certainly carries through the rest of my day.
Yeah. I have family that read the book Doggone it now.
My Morning Ritual?
Not that. Miracle Morning, I think. Miracle Morning. Have you heard of that book? Have you read it?
Yeah. Is that the one with the guy who had like a...
Can you pull that up, Andrew? Because I'm not too familiar with it.
There's one I read. I can't remember the author's name, but he had he was diagnosed with a pretty serious disease and decided to rearrange his mornings.
Oh, interesting.
It might be called My Morning Miracle.
Okay, so this one is The Miracle Morning. I think that's the book that I was...
that's it.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
is that the guy that has the disease or had a disease?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hal Elrod, yeah.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I have not read that book, but I guess, let me be honest with you. I was thinking it was sort of a fluffy, kind of shallow self-help sort of situation where a guy was like, talk about some morning routine and sell some books. But now knowing that he had a illness, I guess, I feel like I want to read the book now.
Yeah. I thought it was a really, really cool book. Took away a couple things from it, and tried a couple things that he does. But again, the general summary of that is just being intentional with your mornings and trying to be thoughtful and planning your day ahead.
Yeah. Evening. What are you? And are you sleeping from 8 to 5:30? Because that's quite a bit of rest.
Yeah. So I'm in bed by 8 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sleeping by like 9:30?
I'm out pretty quick.
Oh, wow.
I'm
okay.
probably asleep. If I'm still awake and it's 8:30, something like, then I will go and do a meditation app, like a sleep meditation app. But that's super rare for me. I have a difficult time in hotel rooms, which is funny because they used to be a perfect place. I love sleeping in hotel rooms, but now for some reason, I have a really difficult time sleeping in hotels. So I'll go through and I'll do a sleep meditation app, and that knocks me out pretty quick. I haven't finished one yet. Usually they're 20 minutes long, and I'll make it probably 10 minutes in, and I'm having to turn it off because the voice is waking me up. So.
Oh, okay, interesting. And what app are you using for that?
The Insight Timer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. I generally do not have a hard time falling asleep, but occasionally something will get I feel like it gets stuck in my mind and I can't get to sleep. And last night was one of those times I didn't get to sleep till probably close to midnight. I feel fine. I mean, I slept till 6 and then hit snooze until close to 7. I feel good. That really frustrates me. There's almost nothing that frustrates me more than not being able to get to sleep. It's so bad. I took a melatonin. I don't know if that really helped. But what I do sometimes is just to try to get my mind out of the thing is listen to some ASMR.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Which apparently some of the ASMR gets sexual and weird and stuff like that. But just
yeah. I've got a friend who's like that.
Just listening to someone scratch a mic on YouTube.
Yeah.
It just makes you sleepy. There's a science to it.
It's funny you say that because my sort of strange relaxation is when I'm on a flight and they go through the safety routine, the flight attendants. I turn everything off and I just sit there and pay attention because it calms and relaxes me.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
There's a science to it. Yeah. And some people's voices are like that too. My goodness, I was on the phone with his first name is Wendell from the office of the Texas comptroller's office yesterday. And this guy's voice, man, I was having a hard time staying awake on the phone call. It's just like there's a science to ASMR. It's the cadence. It's the particular
the tone,
movements, the tone, all of that. All right. So you mentioned something about tracking things on a spreadsheet the other day. Is that morning or is that evening?
So I enter in the information in the evening because and there's just a whole range of things that I track, and I'm going to grow it next year. I'm going to add a couple more columns. But the key there is I'll just have an overall rating for how I felt that day on a scale of 1 to 10. Like yesterday, I was like 8.4. I felt pretty good, not my best, but try and stay in tracking also my routines for the day. The sauna, the cold shower, devotional, what I talked about, thoughts for the day, and then I'll have like a good deed. What did I do to help somebody out that day, and then put an overall mood. So that's pretty. I just started doing the actual spreadsheet for 2020.
Okay.
So I made notes and did some journaling and things. I'm bad at consistently writing, but I'm super consistent at a spreadsheet.
Sure. Yeah, I can resonate with that for sure. What time are you getting home in the evening, or what time is dinner?
So I eat. I'll get home. Here lately, I've been getting home around 2:33 because I love working in my home office.
Okay.
It's just more peaceful. There's no, there's not a lot of distractions there. I don't have kids.
Okay.
And it's rare that my dogs, they're older, they don't mess with me. But I have a lot less distractions at home. So I'll get home roughly 2:33. And we target dinner for around 5:36.
Okay.
We catch a lot of heat from my friends. They think that we're old people. Like, that's truly
not
what
wrong.
I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I want to eat because I want to be asleep.
Yeah.
Right.
And then diet. Do you mind sharing your height and weight, by the way?
I am 5'9", and I've actually lost some weight, so I'm down to about 177.
177.
Yeah.
So I was up to 177 just 3 weeks ago. And I was back in L5 Fitness for like 2 weeks because I had a bad lower back, and that healed. And last Tuesday, I think I have a pulled or torn intercostal muscle. It's like the muscles that hold your rib cage together. And this thing is tender, man. And it's not like, it feels as bad today as it did a week and a day ago. It was sore the day before we did the split jerks. We did split jerks last Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I went somewhat heavy on the split jerks, and I think that really did it. And now I'm down to like 173. So I would like to, when I don't work out, I get soft and I don't feel good and I get a little gut and things like that, but I don't put on weight. Actually, I put on weight when I start working out at CrossFit. I'd kind of like to get to like 180, 185 if possible.
I'm the exact same way. So, it's funny you say L5 because I had hurt my back coming. It was that gap that we had there when we were shut down with COVID for, I don't know, 3 months there. Really didn't do a lot. And you got to think that I had been working out at a minimum 5 days a week for the previous 6 years. So now I've got this 3 month span of trying to go jogging and like,
right.
What is that? So I'm like, oh man, it's just, so of course, but the other thing, it was not only the working out. I took for granted too, the 30 minutes I get to the gym beforehand and do all my stretching and mobility things. So I'd lost a tremendous amount of mobility. I was so focused on the strength that I lost and the cardio, the cardiovascular fitness that I was, down on. But I think the key there was that I also wasn't stretching. And so to try and pick it back up with that focus on strength and get back my muscle mass, the form had gone, especially being an older athlete. I don't have the natural dexterity I did 10 years ago. So there was some, and that's what, of course, caused my back injury was the lack of dexterity and lack of mobility and having some less than optimal form.
Mm-hmm.
And then that time period of coming back, I'm like you. I don't gain weight. I lose weight. I lose weight pretty dramatically. And on my frame, 10 pounds is a lot, and that's what I dropped.
You dropped 10 pounds?
10 pounds, yeah.
During your back injury?
Yeah.
Whoa, that is a lot.
I would say in February, I was around 185.
Okay.
Felt great. My body fat percentage was low, around 10 or 11, which is optimal for me. That's where I want to be. And I know that that's a little high for most people. Most people want to get super shredded, but for me, I think my best overall, how I feel, is around that 10 to 11.
Okay.
And was really feeling great. It felt like I was performing the best I'd ever had been. And then when all that happened, and I just saw a dramatic decrease in weight, muscle mass, strength. My strength's still down, and we've been back in the gym now for months.
Yeah.
It just takes such a long time to get that back.
So you feel like your strength is still down from having missed, and I remember your back injury was pretty serious. I mean, it looked pretty bad for some period of time. You feel like you still not gained that strength back, which it'd be both from the injury and from COVID having shut the gym down.
Sure.
Correct? For both.
Yeah, it was kind of it was the sort of the perfect storm. Another factor that plays into that is I go to a doctor pretty frequently. I go every 10 weeks and get my blood checked, and I check my levels. And the doctor that I use, he specializes in trying to optimize male performance, overall male performance. And, I went through a phase where I had really low testosterone, so we tweaked a couple other little things like vitamin D and just hormone levels. So I've been really conscious of trying to make sure that I'm at my peak performance. But I got off of that because my wife and I are trying to start a family. So I've just totally removed from that, trying to remove everything, get back to as natural as possible.
Okay.
So you compound that coupled with COVID, coupled with the back injury, is just like the perfect storm. So now I'm trying to build back.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you feel like if you're strong and optimal that you want to be about 185 pounds?
Yeah, that's my target.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't been 185 pounds, much at all. I'm not actually sure if I've ever kind of I feel like I broke 180, 182 back when I was like late teens. I was just pounding. My younger brother and I got a book about like bodybuilding, and I wouldn't want to do that now because I don't want to trade what you get with CrossFit just to have like a big bicep or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would eat like a dozen eggs right before I go to bed and just pounding the protein. And I think I got up above 180. I would like to be 180 to 185, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can get there if I have the strength. But so you've been, well, let me ask you about your diet. What is your diet?
I'm not as intentional. I don't have a really honed in structure. Like I'm not counting my macros to the nth degree like most people are. I'm not saying that I won't ever get to that point, but I'm just really conscious. My focus is on eating clean, real foods and try and put an emphasis, especially here in the last month, because I'm trying to put weight back on healthy fats. It's really my target.
Such as?
I've eaten more avocados in the last month. I mean, I'm really starting to get burnout on it. But I eat. So in the morning, my morning coffee, I'll put in a tablespoon of butter. I put in collagen protein. So I try and get some healthy fats right out of the gate there. Now that I am in this aggressive trying to put weight back on, I will eat eggs, bacon, things like that every other day.
Okay.
So like yesterday I ate, today I didn't. Tomorrow I will go back and eat some more. And I'm just tweaking my morning diet intake, just seeing how my weight's going, seeing if it's progressing in the right direction. For lunch, again, just trying to find, for so long there, pre-COVID, I would just go to the salad bar at Sprouts every single day. I did that
Okay. Yeah.
ever since they opened. I was there every day, and I'm just getting salad, tuna, chicken, just loading it up, cheese, trying to get in as many greens as possible. So I'd eat a massive salad. And dinner, we do a couple of the delivery services like HelloFresh, and we had Blue Apron for a while. So it's pretty clean. We craft it to make sure that it's less carbohydrate driven, more clean. So really, I don't have a good, I do track on a keto diet app, I'm not keto, but I use it because I love the app. I think it's a great tracker.
Okay.
So I will enter in and just check sporadically to make sure that my macros are reasonable.
Yep.
But I eat pretty consistently the same thing every day.
Okay.
The term my buddy used, he got on a keto diet and has lost 70 pounds in the last
Whoa.
year. Yeah. He said that his big mental shift was that he went from living to eat to just eating to live. And I think that's really the approach I have, is I don't eat for pleasure as much as I do really just sustenance.
Yeah, same. I do not like eating during the workday. And so for lunch, for example, I don't eat breakfast and I don't eat lunch. I have a protein shake after I work out, and then I eat from like 5 to 10 p.m. every day. But I'm on the carnivore diet right now, and that gives me the energy through the next day. I'm really not hungry during the day. So I really like that. But back when, I was eating breakfast and lunch and all these things, and you're at work and you're busy, like the last thing I want to do is go to lunch or sit down and eat lunch. Like I just wanted a pill just because like I like to just eat because I kind of had to for sustenance, Although having said that, I still like occasionally, going to a really nice restaurant or making a really great steak and then just like enjoying that to the full,
Absolutely.
So I'm it's kind of both ways on that. If it's just an everyday thing, let's just get me what I need to be healthy and keep going. But occasionally, let's really like enjoy the food,
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah. On the off, so right now you're saying every other day morning you'll eat eggs, but on the off, like this morning, did you just not have breakfast?
So I sort of fall in the same boat that you do. Is I'm not super hungry in the mornings or during the day. I think that's what made me so great pre-COVID, when I was at my optimal weight of 185, did a tremendous amount of intermittent fasting because I was a huge fan, because I thought it was easy for me because I really didn't have an appetite through the hours of the morning until 1, 2 p.m. So I'm excited to get back to that because I felt great on that plan. But for me, I really think right now with trying to climb it back, I'm really just trying to take in as many calories as possible.
Okay.
But that is the ultimate goal, is to get back to intermittent fasting.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, that makes sense. And are you taking creatine or protein shakes or anything like? Are you supplementing with anything right now?
I've increased with this weight loss. I've just recently increased my protein shake intake. I've always taken collagen protein with coffee in the morning.
Okay.
But here lately, with the weight being down, that I've definitely taken in an afternoon shake, which is strangely tough for me because my body doesn't seem to it doesn't. I can tell that my body's really sensitive to taking that in at that time frame. I'm not a huge fan of how I feel after it.
Oh, interesting. The protein shake in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's weird. I feel kind of bloated.
Okay.
After it, and I've sort of tweaked it between almond milk and water and just doing different things. So I'm trying to find that balance there. But to answer your question, yes, I mean there's definitely been an increase in protein shakes. Creatine, I haven't done as much. I used to do it pretty religiously. And then it came up on one of my lab reports. Like I said, getting tracked every 10 weeks. One of my lab reports, my doctor didn't like the fact that I was retaining so much water.
Okay.
Great for lifting and things like that, but he didn't like it for some health reasons, so I scaled the creatine back.
Okay.
But I don't really supplement beyond vitamins.
Okay. Yeah.
And I take a lot of vitamin D, but beyond that, I'm not doing any type of hardcore GNC supplementation thing.
Yeah, me neither. You mentioned preparing to start a family. That reminds me of, let's see, Lincoln's 10. He's our oldest. So this was, 10, 11 years ago. When my wife and I were getting ready to start our family, I was, I went hardcore, like, obviously no soda, which I haven't drank soda in years and years. And I think that's an easy one that people should probably cut out in general, but no soda, no bourbon, no alcohol, no cigars, no hot baths, definitely no hot tubs. And we were in Hawaii at the time, and I was like, we were on vacation, and I was like doing all this stuff, trying to be like optimal, to start this family. And then we have 5 kids, and so by the time like the 4th and 5th kid came along, I remember with Jericho, he's our 3rd boy, he was the 4th kid, and we were about ready to like, start getting ready to like try for that 4th kid. And he came along like a month early, and I hadn't like cleaned up my act yet. And I was like, oh man, this kid's just going to be like, he's going to like have 6 fingers and all this. Yeah. And he's fine. He's totally fine. Yeah. But we cared a little bit less as like we had more kids. We were a little bit less particular. What I like about your height and weight and age is I feel like, unless your genetics are just much better than mine, which obviously that's certainly a possibility, I really don't have many excuses on why I can't start like getting closer to your performance. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing you're saying with your diet that I can't do. You're not, there's nothing, you're going 5-6 days a week and working out. I can do that. Like and yet your performance is considerably better than mine. So is it maybe the 6 years of consistent work that you're putting in?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it just boils down to the duration that I've been doing CrossFit, just with the movements. It has a tremendous advantage. I mean, there's, we saw that with some of these younger 20-something-year-old kids coming in the gym who are just, built perfectly for CrossFit. They've got the natural endurance. They're beaming with natural testosterone.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I still beat them at, and it circles back to the fact that I've been doing this for almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing CrossFit before CrossFit was cool, that type of mentality. And it's really just fine-tuning, because it's not solely about how strong you are, how fit you are. There's this other side to how well your movements are, your range, perfecting your range of motion, perfecting the entry, even the thruster. It's not only perfecting it to where you've got that thing, the bar resting in a perfect position where you're not taxing your shoulders, bouncing, rebounding out of the bottom, but also is breathing through it. I'm still constantly working on it, but your breath work through the movement too all plays a role that I think can have a tremendous advantage over just raw, brute, natural talent.
Yes.
At the time that I've had.
For sure. The breathing thing is interesting because I have noticed occasionally Evans will remind us to breathe through a particular movement or something. And it's good word because some of those movements you do sort of forget to breathe through. But the breathing thing it's so critical because this is what I love about CrossFit is you have these constantly varied high intensity functional movements, and you'll go from, and I feel like Evan does a really good job at this, is mixing like the 3 movements we're going to do through the WOD. Those are good 3 movements to mix together. And if you don't breathe through, you're just gonna gas out so quickly. So the breathing thing is critical.
Yeah.
Do you think when it comes to some of these 20-somethings that you can still beat, is it the almost decade of CrossFit experience, or is it your mental toughness, or a little bit of both? Because man, there is that trigger in your mind that just wants to stop or slow down probably quite a bit earlier than you really would have to.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we've hit on several times now the weight. Now I'm trying to get my weight and things back, but the one of the biggest things, that probably the number one thing I'm trying to get back, is that pain cave mentality. It's how much I'm willing to push and take. That for me is really down right now. You know, we're getting to the point in these workouts where last year I didn't stop. I knew it was going to be really painful, but now my mentality is really like, I'm just going to let up. I'm fighting that back. So it's a fight. That's probably the more difficult fight than it is to try and pack on my muscle mass and get my strength back. It's really in these WODs trying to push through because I know it's going to hurt. Like yesterday was a prime example. There's no reason why I should have stopped when I stopped 15 seconds early. I could have repped out 10 more.
Sure.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
So there's that battle too. It's a mental struggle. And that, to me, I think that's one of the biggest reasons too, besides the competition element of CrossFit, but the mental battle that's there every day. You're going to war with yourself every day. And that's the way I choose to look at it. And it's a similar mentality that I take into the sauna, into the breath work, into my actual job and work too, is acknowledging that the struggle's there and how much of it are you willing to take on.
Yes,
the fight.
Exactly. And that dynamic of competing with that mixture of competing with other people and competing with yourself at CrossFit too, there's something about that I really like too, because sometimes in some workouts or some days, based on how I'm feeling, I'll straight up try to beat someone, and it's all about just competing with someone else. And then others, and most days, it's just trying to do your best and get a little, faster and stronger, and trying to like push a little harder than you think you might be able to. I just like that mixture. I think I have my wife starting next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's been doing yoga consistently for some time, and Lord willing, we're done having kids now, and that bridge has been crossed, and
Five's enough.
And, we were having kids every 2 years. So it's like, when you're breastfeeding babies and things, like it just kind of keeps, it just more or less keeps the fat off, is my understanding. Well, now that we're done having kids, like she's going to work a little harder to keep her body in kind of the position that she'd like it to be in. So, I was, we talked about CrossFit off and on for a while, and she's not like a natural. She's not like, it's not like she's like wanting to go to CrossFit because she doesn't have that competitive nature and those types of things. But I think it'd be a great fit. So we'll see how she likes it. Andrew, can you pull up Chad's Facebook post? I saw on your Facebook page you had a comment about, just go to Chad Stevens, the gym getting shut down. You had a good post on that.
Yeah, it's funny because I try and remove myself from any type of political, hot topic debates. I don't. Yeah, it's hard. But I try and just stay removed from it. But I think this moment was just the epitome for me of frustration because I'm removed from it, and I try and focus because it's really easy, especially right now, to get bogged down in the constant fighting. There's a new issue, something else to debate every single day. So I have to remove myself from it and think, it's like, how am I being affected in my day right now? What if I just turn the phone off and go through my day? I've got it. It's just so much more positive in a better experience.
Yes,
but this particular thing is just really where I was directly impacted in my day to day. It's like, don't mess with my church, don't mess with gym. And those were like the two places that I go outside of home and work.
Yep.
And for those things to just be up and removed,
Yes.
I was okay for a while. But then I realized that we can do it reasonably and enough information had come out about it.
Right.
And this particular day just seemed to be a day where I just had it. I'm like, we're being as safe as possible. We've got 800 square feet to ourselves. Nobody's around. We're spraying everything. And so it's like, we can do this safe. Just leave us alone. It's really like freedom.
Yeah, for sure.
We can laugh now, but at the time I was literally I was ready to lose it. I was so frustrated.
Well, what's crazy about this, I see the date on this is May 8th. So is this when Evan got shut back down? He opened a little bit and got shut back down because that really sucked. And so you just have here, today marks the first day that I'm disappointed to be a Nashville citizen. Our gym owner has gone above and beyond to keep members safe and the gym clean, which he really has. He's done a really good job. Every member is an adult. That's a key point, and has the ability to judge what risks they are or aren't willing to take. Another key point. Yet today we had two overweight, quote-unquote, health department reps come in to tell us what's healthy and shut it down. That's a interesting, a
little frustration there.
Sure. Not trying to be dramatic, but how is this not tyrannical? Our gym owner, soon to be father of three, will probably go out of business because he has already been crushed by this. How is this not in direct conflict with everything we are taught about the Constitution? And then this note, every day is a gift. Life is, you lost me, Andrew. No, you're on some other Chad Stevens. It was working. Don't touch it. That's another Chad. Anyhow, the point there was every day is a gift, but we're adults. We can make our own decisions. And what was interesting about this here is this was May. I get the hysteria in February and March because no one knows what's happening.
Sure.
This thing's coming over from China. The whole world's going to crap, apparently. No one knows how to fix it. There's no vaccine, blah, blah, blah. But then we learned a lot about it, and to shut down a gym, a CrossFit gym of all the gyms you could shut down in May, when we know more about it, it was really weird. And I think I think when you just look at it objectively, it's like, this is sort of a byproduct of some of the weird ways in which everyone is looking out for their jurisdiction and then not really like abiding by common sense. What I mean by that is Mayor Cooper is in charge of Nashville, Davidson County. So he's going to make his laws. And then across the county line in Brentwood, you have the YMCA, which Evan said is the busiest gym in the state of Tennessee, which is crazy. 10 minutes from CrossFit. And they're open and people are coming in and out. And it's a YMCA, which means, no offense, but your health per attendee is probably not quite as good as a CrossFit gym. And so now you have a less populated, better gym, 10 minutes from a more populated, higher chance, I would think, of spreading. And it doesn't really make sense logically. But it's like everyone's looking out for their own. I mean, you see it kind of at scale right now with like people fleeing California. Sure. That governor's looking out for his state and he's just going to do what he needs to do, I guess. Then people are going to make decisions based on there. And right now, a lot of people don't like those decisions as being made and they're leaving California and coming to other places. So the risk here was Evan's in a really bad position because, I mean, shoot, if Evan had been shut down for a long, long period of time, people would have to leave. You'd have to. And now the poor guy's out of business.
Sure.
But
it's not like a CrossFit gym membership is, super cheap.
No, it's not super cheap and it's not mandatory and it's totally, voluntary. And I mean, it's a free market. So if people aren't going to keep paying that membership if they can't go to the gym. But during that time, what I think got missed a lot with COVID, with shutting down this gym in particular, I had a direct experience with that. But I think it's a bigger thing with COVID is, when they shut that gym down, I can't go to the gym now. And if I'm not going to a gym, it's a bad snowball for me. Like I'm not as healthy. I don't feel as good. And quite frankly, I go into a bad place mentally. Like it's not a good snowball in that direction at all. And I think we're seeing that kind of at scale now with COVID and the social distancing and the impact that's having on people's mental health, and depression and suicides are up. Alcoholism's way up, those types of things. So I just wanted to kind of bring it up because I agree with all your sentiment here.
Yeah. And you touched on it, the compounding effect that it had on so many of us that use CrossFit as obviously a channel to stay healthy, stay fit, keep our bodies stressed, in shape, but also just it's almost like a break and release, because there is a lot of the community side of it. Getting to talk to the guys, getting to see you every day, talking, just chatting about the day is kind of like a stress reliever. So,
yes,
it was just multifaceted, the things that were being taken away. And the thing that bothered me so much about it was that Cooper elected to just do a blanket policy. He didn't take the time, and it wouldn't have required an exorbitant amount of time. I know the guy's busy, but all he had to do was be able to differentiate between a mega gym and a boutique gym. Very simple. Take the time to iron out and understand which business. He just said, no, let's just shut everything down.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be closed. And it's like, man, what you're doing there by not taking the time to differentiate between the two has a dramatic impact on your citizens.
Yeah.
And at a time where I feel like we need to be at our healthiest. We need to be at our healthiest, not only physically, but emotionally and socially.
Yep.
That's when we need it. And he just yanks it all away, thinking it's under the flag of greater good.
Yep.
It's like, man, no, I think it would be best in this scenario, you leave it up to us adults to make our own decision about our life.
Yes.
And that was the part, the ending part of the last thing I said on that post was that, every day is a risk. We're taking risks every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're statistically more likely to die on the way to the gym than we are to get COVID and die.
Yeah.
So every day is a gift. And, to just do that, it just really didn't sit well with me at the time.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, there's a massive difference between Planet Fitness, where they're serving cookies and pizza, and, you're just sort of walking on the treadmill quite a lot. Or, over there pumping some weights or whatnot. But there's a very big difference between that and a CrossFit gym. So I agree with your assessment. Let's put a little bit more time and effort into it. And furthermore, my understanding is that gyms, through this whole process, at least in Davidson County, gyms were largely tracking with restaurants and bars. Is that your understanding? Like whatever the restaurants and bars were kind of allowed to do, the gyms were allowed to do. It wasn't like gyms were open when restaurants and bars were still shut down, right?
So
they sort of tracked the same trajectory.
I'm not fully confident in this memory, but I want to say that gyms were they were more harsh on gym owners than they were restaurants, because I think that there was a point in time where restaurants and bars were allowed to go to 25%, but gyms were still in like that secondary after the fact phase of reopening to where they could come in. So at a minimum, they were equal, which was pretty tough. I mean, the toughest of any business.
Yep.
But there may have been a little bit harsher.
Which is crazy.
It's really wild.
Crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, just a total difference of opinion. As somebody who is really conscious and constantly is trying to study and optimize my own body, for me, I feel like I know what's best for myself. And, to have somebody, not me, tell me what's best for me, when it's like, man, I study this every day. I'm tracking everything I do. I track daily to try and optimize how I feel. But yet this guy who, I put the quotes behind, health department, coming in and basically being judge, jury, and executioner of not only my personal health, but like I said in the post too, is this gym owner, he's got a family. He's he's on his way to having his third child, and he's already lost half of his members. And it's like doomsday's approaching, all because you're like, you don't want to take the time to differentiate.
Yes.
It's really just a bad situation for me.
It is ironic when you think about it, that And I don't know Mayor Cooper's details, and I don't need to, but I think it would be safe to say he's probably a little bit overweight, just a little bit.
Absolutely.
So
I mean,
you have
he
that,
is.
and then you have these health inspectors that walk into that gym a little overweight. And that's like one of the biggest things. I mean, obesity, age, certainly pre-existing conditions. I mean, those are things where COVID is not so kind to. So you have what seems to be people not living a super healthy lifestyle, maybe not caring so much or seeing the value so much in activity and exercise and eating clean and getting sunshine and having, making sure you're taking the right vitamins and those types of things, really not caring or seemingly caring or paying too much attention to that, making these laws that has a direct impact on sort of like a high-performing physical specimen such as yourself. I mean, it is kind of ironic when you think about it.
It's super strange. And I mean, we take it for granted in this country. I've taken that for granted for my previous 38 years on this planet. I've never thought that one day someone could come in and overrule like my day-to-day life like that and have a tremendous impact in this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blessing that I've had that ignorance up to this point. It's definitely something that I'm really grateful for. But man, when you shine that light on it, and again, I even phrased it in my quote is like, I'm not trying to be dramatic here,
Right.
but how is this not tyrannical? I mean, this is basically the definition of it here.
Yeah, it really is. But the other aspect that you touched on too, that I was hearing, Megan Kelly just started a podcast in the last 2 weeks, I think, and she was talking yesterday. I was listening to her conversation with Candace Owens a little bit, and one of the things they were discussing, which you also touch on in this post, and you just brought it up, is that there is risk built into everything we do all of the time. And like you mentioned, we're at a greater risk driving in the car through the traffic to get to the gym than we are going to CrossFit Forte and contracting COVID there. And the media is doing something right now that is pretty unprecedented. And certainly they're not doing with all things, which is tracking the cases and the deaths so specifically and so no, not specifically, that's not the right word, although that works too, but so dramatically and so pervasively. And they're not tracking deaths so far this year from tobacco, which tobacco is the biggest killer we have in this country, and it's totally legal and people are doing it every day and no one's talking about it. Like 500,000 people die every year in this country from tobacco use. Well, the news is not tracking that. They're not tracking deaths from car accidents. They're not tracking deaths from alcohol overdoses, which is a massive killer in this country as well. So there's a lot of things that they're not tracking, but they are tracking the COVID deaths. And so by nature of, these news outlets that have a monopoly sort of on people's time and attention, they're basically discipling the people of America. I mean, this is something that TJ mentioned, our pastor at in a meeting, a few weeks ago. Like, right now the church is being fairly well out discipled. You know what I mean? By all the news and everything that's going on, there's this inundation of information and drama and, partisanship. It's crazy. But anyhow, just to bring it back to the point of there's so many risks that we all take every single day. Whether I'm on my phone a little bit, and you see this all the time, if I'm on my phone a little bit driving down the road, I'm endangering you. No one's talking about that. But if we happen to walk within 12 feet of each other and, you don't have a mask and I do, and
here comes the sirens.
Here comes the sirens.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And I can't speak to, the editors at these media outlets and but I think the common sense everyday person like myself is what I consider. I definitely know that something else is going on there. There's ulterior motives there, a reason why they want to spin that. And it's really easy to get, because that's the thing too. And I try and find where we're responsible for it in some degree. I always try and look inward first when I'm confronting a problem. What did I do to contribute to it? And I think as a society, we've gotten to this point where we're consuming this stuff.
Right.
They're definitely, you got to give them some credit. The media, the editors and the outlets, they understand what it is that we like to consume.
Yes.
And definitely COVID's one of those that's right up there where people can't help but click on it and look at it. I mean, is the everyday person going to really be intrigued by another person dying of tobacco use, even though that it's such a huge factor? So I'm not trying to defend media at all, because I think that they're playing a huge negative role right now in us as a society. But I do think we need to think about what we're consuming. And the big takeaway for me is that I don't know if everybody has the ability. I hope they do, but I hope people are conscious enough of what they're doing to be able to acknowledge it and say, yeah, we get it. I mean, because that's what I did with the whole COVID thing. If I truly thought that the thing was as dangerous, I mean, that's why the timeline of that post is important, because in February, March, I didn't know. I mean, who's it targeting?
Yeah,
I mean, this could be bad. I'm not going to out of the gate say, don't put pressure on my gym to close. What are you talking about? No, I went through the waiting period too, which I think any rational person would do. It's just the follow-up of it is really what stood out to me.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think the role of government should be in a situation like this? Do you think that the government should have the ability to require us to social distance or to shut some things down if it's proven that there's a threat out there that's dangerous enough to require an extreme action like that? Or do you think that, in all cases, they should let grown adults think for themselves? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on government's role in a situation like this.
So, if I were to put myself in this Democrat Republican, I'm definitely more midline libertarian.
Yeah,
I definitely feel like government should be there. Government certainly has a purpose in our society. I mean, it's very, very obvious. It's an important aspect of our society, but I think that I draw the line at civil liberties. I don't want to go. I'm in support of any type of law that, if someone else's actions are endangering those the other, whether it be intentional or not, definitely needs to be looked at case by case, because I don't want to do anything that puts anybody else at risk. That's why I'm not overly excited about having to wear a mask every day, but I've come to grips with it because I'm less focused on the government telling me to do it and more focused on that other person. I don't know how they feel. They could be sick. It's like, just put it on.
Yeah.
So I've come to grips with it. And it wasn't an easy one. It wasn't like I just woke up and immediately when I heard that the government's telling me I've got to do this, I'm right in line, saluting, ready to go.
Yeah.
I try and step out and give it some rational thought of what if there's somebody that's there at the supermarket that's sick. So I'm not dead set on a blanket policy like government should tell us to stay in our houses, or the government should just let us run free will and we go out and do whatever we want. There's an answer in the middle, but it takes thought and it takes a common sense and rational approach. And I think that we miss that, at least here in Nashville. I think that our mayor missed that and may have either consciously or subconsciously let the power aspect drive him in his decision making. I mean, I do know that he held some rallies, things like that. I won't go into which ones he did, but he was doing things that totally contradicted what he was doing to small businesses.
Right.
So for me, that's when I take a hardline stance on it. It doesn't mean that I think people should be able to do whatever the hell they want whenever they want. But I definitely oppose that approach wholeheartedly.
Yes.
I don't think that he put the thought that he should have as a leader into making those decisions. So I may be tiptoeing around your question to some degree. I just don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that question.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And a great example of governmental overreach, I think, was what's the governor of New York, Andrew
Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo, when he mandated that nursing homes had to receive patients that had COVID-19 back into the nursing home. Were you aware of that?
Disaster.
It's insane. That is insane.
Jaw dropping.
It's jaw dropping. It really is. And it didn't get much press because apparently he's more left and the media tends to be more left friendly. And so it didn't really get covered. But I heard this from family. And at the time, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I thought it was just more right wing people kind of making some things up, or like I just was like that. There's no way. Well, as it turns out, there is a way, and it did happen. And he mandated that privately owned nursing homes had to accept back in patients that had COVID-19, and it's so absurd. And that's just a good example of a governmental overreach. And then you also saw a double standard this summer with, a lot of the protests and the BLM stuff going on, which, look, I mean, I think there's some things that this country should fix, and but let's not condone. I mean, those the people in like those gatherings are people. I mean, masks or not. I mean, the COVID didn't care whether you were a person that happened to be at church or a person that happened to be in a protest. I mean, it was going to spread either way. So it really was a weird sort of double standard going on.
Yeah, and imagine watching that double standard as a small business owner, and you
Right.
see that. I mean, it's just really, it's just really concerning. I mean, if there's there's multiple takeaways from this year,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the biggest ones for me is that I'm just astonished by, like you have termed it, of the government overreach and how they've extended into areas that I never thought in a million years that they would extend into.
Exactly. I heard, I know this was a statement from one of the two main guys in a documentary called No Safe Spaces. Have you seen that? Really, really great. And it's two guys, and I can't remember their names, and they were doing some like a speaking tour in like 2018 and 2019, just about free speech and how America is so different with free speech than other countries. And one of the things that they were talking about in there is that the innate human desire, the strong inward human desire, is not actually to be free. It's to be taken care of. So when you think about what's happening in America right now, there's this, it does make sense. It does explain some of the mob mentality, some of the things that are going on. Because if the inward deep human desire is to be free, then a lot of this stuff doesn't really make sense. But if it's to be taken care of by your college or your government or your municipality, whatever, your mayor, all of these things, well, then that explains sort of this need for laws and regulations and you tell us what to do. Like no one really says this out loud, but it sort of explains the quick receptivity to just accept, like, you tell us what to do. There's this deep need where it's like, we want to be told what to do. And it's it's sort of anti-American, but listen, Americans are humans, just like Italians are humans and Brazilians are humans. Like we're humans. I mean, we like to think we're Americans and we're just free at heart or whatever. And an element of that is true, but we're still human. And I thought that was a fascinating point because I would have thought the kind of the innermost drive of human nature is to be free. Well, as it turns out, no, it's to be taken care of. But we need to fight against that because we're not going to be taken care of properly from other people. We have to take care of ourselves and our families and our community and be contributors to society. So that was insightful to me. It kind of explained some of the behavior that we've been seeing in the last few years that just doesn't really seem to make sense logically. And it's not going to work because you can't. This is where capitalism seems to work. And capitalism can get wonky for sure because you have people with, greed and selfish motives and those types of things. But at least you have the decisions being decentralized more. When you start to really centralize decisions, which you see in a more socialistic society, immediately it just doesn't work as well as a decentralized decision structure. I mean, you see this in companies.
Sure. I mean, and that's, circles back to the when you start to centralize those decisions, it's really easy to think that there's a one size fits all for every circumstance and scenario. And it's just, we've seen it time and time again that it's not. That's not the answer.
Yeah.
It needs more thought. It needs to be broken out. It needs to be thought of in each individual segment and how it impacts them. So, yeah, I agree. That's an interesting point of we want to be free versus we want to be taken care of. And that's interesting. That's the first time I've heard of it, but my brain immediately goes to, well, for me, who's the best at looking out for myself?
Mm-hmm.
Is it some guy sitting in his, governor's mansion or mayor's office, or is it me who is constantly making conscious efforts to improve and do better and watch over everything associated with my life? So that's where I would really want to start that thought.
Yeah.
Is who would be more fit to make decisions to take care of myself.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. You mentioned, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought I heard you kind of say you don't pay too much attention to what's going on politically or in the news, so forth. So what do you pay attention to and what don't you? Are you watching the news, reading the news on a daily basis, or are you more, it is what it is. If it doesn't have a direct effect on me, I'm not going to pay attention to it, and you're going to be focused on what you need to be in charge of?
So this circles back to my old man mentality. So I still get paper copies of the Wall Street Journal every morning.
Oh, God bless you. Right there's today's copy right here. Isn't there something about a physical paper?
Yeah, I just have to do it.
It's so satisfying.
Yeah, it's the old man gene in me, but I absolutely love it. So I do read the Wall Street Journal every morning, and I try and hit the highlights, the left-hand side. I read through the highlights, and if something sticks out to me that I really want to interest in. But the reason why I started that process is because I do a lot of market investing, and I'm really financially conscious of the different things that I do, and you just can't help but pick it up and then see a different article that's politically related, or the opinion section is really, it's interesting depending on my mindset. But between that and when I get home too, I'll turn on like Power Lunch or CNBC, just watching market activity and getting some different commentary there. So I get that news filtered through the financial take, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, does make sense. Speaking of that, then, what's kind of your investment strategy, at least whatever you're willing to share here? Your own things, real estate. We've talked a little bit about restaurants, stock market. What we need to hear what you do for work too, by the way, Southern Wall Systems. But I'm curious from an investment standpoint, what's your kind of strategy there?
We'll start with let's just start with the stock market activity I want to do there. So I have a set it and forget it, boring 401k structured, which is heavy, pretty much all index funds, especially being under 40 years old. I check it once a month, and that's just because I track my personal finances the same way I do the companies, is like a balance sheet. So I'll check that just once a month, but I don't really care. I'm not making any active movements, sporadic. I mean, I do reevaluate it year end, see how things are performing, see if my gut reaction's still there, good in place, set it, but then I'll usually leave it in place.
Mm-hmm. Do you manage that yourself, or do you have a manager for that?
So we go through because it's through the 401k and through a company structure, it's managed by by Voya, a platform.
Got it. Yep.
But I do have the ability to go on there the same I do with my E-Trade account and move it over, swap it over. But again, I set the thing up. It's pretty diversified as far as, between international, small cap, mid cap, large cap. And again, it's just kind of a boring account that just, I max it out every year and just let it sit there. And, but I do have a much more active account, which started probably 4 years ago as kind of a just goofy, just play around in it. Didn't really know much about direct securities investment was more just understood 401ks, but I had no idea about individual companies and investments 4 or 5 years ago when I started this thing. But now it's ballooned over the last, couple years as I've gotten more educated on it. And, I found myself now where that's like I just enjoy it. I enjoy going through. It's almost like a treasure hunt for me is going through companies' K1s and, sorting through their balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, just trying to find an undervalued company.
Okay.
So that account, the E-Trade account, is definitely the more interesting one. What I'll do is, it's a pretty basic approach. I just try and think about the future and where trends are going, where markets going. If there may be a sector that's beat up more than it should be. This year has been really dynamic, obviously. Just with so much volatility in the market, it's been really fun for me to try and forecast out where I think things are going, trying to find the value there. So I've got a portfolio right now of probably 15 companies. I have been stockpiling cash just because of what we see around election time. There's obviously volatility in election time. So been stockpiling cash waiting to strike is if I think that there's some value opening up there. But I think my approach overall could be summed up in that one word of value. I'm not particular. There's some industries that I stay away from because I just don't think that the long-term game's there. But outside of that, I'm really open to value in any industry. I mean, I've got bank stocks. I also have, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I've got some potential high-growth marijuana stocks. I've got, what else? Railroads.
Okay,
So
interesting.
there's kind of some boring things in there. But I say that because that's just where I've found the value is in a lot of different sectors. And everybody needs to have, in my personal opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, but in my personal opinion, everybody should be holding on to those mega cap stocks like your Amazons and Microsofts and things like that. But that's kind of in my boring portfolio. But I'm tracking them if I see that they get their PE ratios down to something that's reasonable. I mean, I think all of them right now are north of 100, which is way too high for me personally. Not saying that they're overvalued. I mean, there's a lot of forecasted growth built in there, but I tend to focus on companies that are, I think the market's just unfair. The market's targeting them at a price point that is just unkind for one reason or another.
Yeah. In the E-Trade, in the sort of the fund, what started out at least as the fund account, that's where you're just buying the individual stocks, correct?
Correct.
And are you spending some amount of time on that on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
So the goal for me there, I check it daily, several times a day, but it's not so much as I'm constantly active. It's more so I'm looking for opportunity, because the ultimate goal for me in that account is, for one, I have stocks in there that I'm not losing sleep over them. It's like I'm buying them because I'm buying them for the long game. I still have that element in there. So really the activity isn't to see how the stocks I own is performing that particular day, because I have no intent to sell one way or another.
Yep.
It's really logging on to see if one of them is getting beat up for some reason, and acknowledging why it is, and if it's something that I should really be concerned with, or if it's something that I think that the company will outlast and I'll buy more.
Right. Yeah, I see. When you said you had some high growth marijuana stock in there, that would be a publicly traded company, obviously in a state where marijuana has been legalized, or is it outside the United States?
So it started out, there's one that I have, it's a Florida-based company that started out, I had to trade it on the Canadian stock market because I bought it, I think, a year and a half ago, when it came out early. But now it has moved over into the Dow, and it's in a legal state, and
Mm.
they're looking to expand into other legal states that are coming up, like Massachusetts and Nevada and those areas. The other one that I have is fully Canadian based. They do have an international reach, but so when I find a sector, this circles back to kind of my overall thought process when I'm researching companies. If I find an industry that I think is going to have a long-term uptick in growth, like marijuana stocks are, I really think that there's going to be high growth there for the next 10, 20 years without question. So I'll take every company in that industry and basically break down their financials, and I've built my own spreadsheet with formulas that I type in, and I just go column by column comparison to figure out which ones I think are better ran. And it goes all the way down to after their balance sheets. I'm also looking at the CEOs and the directors, and just checking into them, seeing what their track record is. And it's really, I look at it as being an investor in that company. And this is what you really are, but it's, it's really pointing out the obvious, but you need to take it serious. I don't. There's not a company that I own that I haven't done a thorough investigation.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you definitely are taking it serious. I mean, you're putting some time into that. Are you doing that sort of in the course of your workday, more or less, or evenings, or
so I'll carve out
the time?
I'll check it sporadically. Like I'll check it at lunch. During lunch times, I also check it in the afternoon. I just randomly will pull up the account.
I see.
But it's not a main focus of my day.
Yep. You mentioned not being I think you said not being a fan of the high growth marijuana stock. Is that because you're not a fan of further legalization, or you're just saying that could be the future is a little bit uncertain there, or you're not a fan of putting too much money into it because it could go you're just not sure how it could shake out?
I should probably retract that I'm not a fan of it. That's probably a bad thing to say. It's just more of it's outside of the box related to its volatility right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Those I have 2 high growth marijuana stocks that are part of my 15 portfolio, and the other 13 are really boring, just long standing. They're not going to see a 5% jump in a day, while the marijuana stocks could drop 12% by lunch and then be back positive by 3:30. So it doesn't reflect my overall investing strategy and mentality. But I definitely, I'm going with my gut on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think? Where do you see the future of marijuana in this country?
I truly believe that it'll be federally legal, probably in the next 5 years.
Wow. Either way on the president, like if Trump, you'd still say the same, and Biden, you'd still say the same?
I think that the tax revenue, if it stays Republican, who are notoriously on the side of opposing it, I think that the ball's already started rolling down the mountain for it. And once we see on a national level the tax benefits associated with it, I think they're not going to be able to look away from it. Plus, another thing that's helping push the Republican angle of it is how it's shown to tremendously benefit PTSD and military, which is, a huge issue of the right. So I think that momentum's on the side of them. I really do. I thought that it would be honest. I thought 2 years ago when I initially bought into those companies that we would have seen more activity on a federal level than we have. So I think it's inevitable. I mean, it's already started. The train's down the tracks. It's going to happen.
There was some noteworthy Republican this summer that spoke in support of legalization. I can't think now who it was, and I shouldn't guess, but it does seem that it's picking up popularity on the Republican side as well. I think here's how I think of it. This, along with even other, well, first of all, it's really strange that marijuana is a class 1 drug right along with heroin. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But this comes back to the libertarian viewpoint. I mean, in my humble, uneducated opinion here, if marijuana and some of these other drugs have an effect on you personally, then put the focus on education, why some of these drugs may be bad for you, why some of them may be good for you. Good uses, bad uses, overuses, abuses, those types of things. More or less, I guess, like we did with alcohol. And then let people make their own decisions.
I agree.
And this comes back to COVID too. Like, why can't we focus on the educating people about what's going on, some of the risks, some of the things to watch out for, some of the things to do to mitigate, and then let people make some of their own decisions. But instead, it does seem like a lot of times, I don't know if this is other countries do this too, but it does seem like, at least in this country, we very quickly just make laws as if people can't think for themselves. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's weird, and I've tried to think about that as to why that's, why that occurs even to this day. And I think if anything, there's an uptick in that thought of just issuing laws to where people they don't know what's best for themselves. And it's kind of boiled down into just human nature. I'm really fascinated with it on that the politician level of why they think and deem that it's best, when I agree with you 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, I would love for government to take the position of just educating society on the wrongs, rights, the scientific data that supports it, making that information readily available for us to make our own decisions.
Exactly.
Versus, experimenting on our own illegally in different ways. I mean, it just opens it up to, sort of a Pandora's box of, forcing people to go about it when there's just an easier answer right in front of us.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. There was some documentary I was watching this summer that this was in another country, and there was an organization that was going in to these areas where there was high levels of addiction on very hard drugs. And instead of like trying to get people to just come clean right away, they would go in there and pass out clean needles and start talking to them and start making friends and start telling them about some of the ways that what they're doing is very beneficial, very detrimental to their health. While at the same time, they're passing out clean needles. So they're in one way, you could look at it as they're sort of facilitating the bad use of these hard drugs. But in another way, at least they're using a clean needle, because these people are going to use these drugs anyway, whether it's a dirty needle or a clean needle, and dirty needles are very bad.
And spreading disease.
But at the same time, they're educating. So it was less about like trying to change behavior based on law, and it was more about making some humanitarian efforts in the meantime, while educating them on what they're doing is very, very bad for themselves, and trying to get them hope for the future. Because I think that hope for the future, that's a big piece to this whole thing. When it comes to, some of the negative habits we have, whether that's, I even think sometimes with junk food, and some of these drugs, like the issue here is we don't have or that person maybe doesn't have the hope for the future that they should. And then that's where we should put some attention. Help them with that, like the core issue, not just the surface issue, the core issue. Work on that, which is the harder work.
Not treating the symptoms, but really getting down to what's at the core of it. And I'm in favor of, it's strange to hear this come from a libertarian, but I'm in favor of trying things outside the box like that. To see if we can get down to, like we said, that core root of the problem, and not just going through these putting Band-Aids on a bullet hole scenarios and expecting that to last us the next 2 decades. It's like, no, let's get serious about it and try and find the core of that problem. Yeah.
I was in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania this summer. My wife grew up Amish. Her parents are still Amish, and she obviously isn't. None of her siblings are anymore either. But Lancaster County, Pennsylvania is like Amish Central. And so we were up there on my brother-in-law's property, and I smelled marijuana. And I was like, man, someone's smoking around here or something. And here it was hemp. So hemp is now legal, to grow, and these Amish are growing hemp like right and left, man.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It is funny, but it also makes sense if like these Amish people know how to grow stuff, and the land up there is great land apparently. And so instead of some of these Amish people were like some of the biggest tobacco growers, and now it's hemp.
Yeah, I mean, same thing like with Kentucky, which was known as a huge tobacco state, and obviously impacted with the reduction in tobacco. I just think that they're a perfect state to take this on, and obviously there's another thing too is there's the lack of opportunity in that state, and it's not only is it a path to generating more revenue to help with the school system, the infrastructure, and things like that, but also giving people opportunity in a region that's not generating a lot of opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I think is really helping that push as well.
Yeah. Bourbon and hemp might be Kentucky's, might help them. Apparently, Kentucky's not in a great place financially.
No.
I think Fadi mentioned that. I hadn't known that.
No.
Huh. Other favorite investments?
So we've hit on the stock market stuff that I do. I have invested in local businesses in the past. I know we had talked about. I've always owned a restaurant bar in one form or another for the last up until 2017 for the previous 15 years up to it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, was fortunate enough to have in my 20s a fearless mentality, and I don't know if that was spawned out of ignorance, just overall ignorance. But I was really aggressive in trying to find way. And I didn't have my family doesn't have much money. Didn't come from money. Didn't have a huge nest egg waiting on me to invest when I was 20. And there wasn't anything like that. But I just was so eager to get into that world that I was willing to just take chances and risks, and have done pretty well investing in those. I had a sort of fell in an untraditional approach. I think the vast majority of restaurant and bar owners go in with the long-term plan of buying it, turning it into a long-standing 20-year nostalgic place like Tootsie's on Broadway, and that's the dream. But I got hit right away with the reality of, no, these things typically go through about a 2-year, 18-month to 24-month honeymoon period. Then they start to tail off, and then things start to get bad. And once they start to go bad, it's really hard to climb back out. It's a battle. So getting that experience in my early 20s really set me up to develop a model of building out the places, which is what I enjoy to do. I hate operations of it. I've never been involved in operations after, I think, my first one. I just totally removed myself from the operations. But I love the creativity part on the front end of finding a spot, coming up with a concept, a story, building it out, and then handing the keys over to somebody who can be there, as an operations guy who's there, 80 hours a week, which is what it takes in those. So my long-term play with restaurant bars switched from that, unreasonable, in my opinion, approach of trying to turn the thing into a multi-decade run of nostalgic era to let's take advantage of the 18 months. Let's show what the thing earns. Let's be very transparent in the financials. Let's hand the thing off to a broker and sell it. So that was really my approach, 25 up until in 2017, where I sold the last one here in Nashville. But that one was a little bit longer of a honeymoon period for us. Definitely was good, but that one ran about 5.5, 6 years.
I see.
Yeah.
And are you selling the property and the restaurant, or just the restaurant bar?
So I didn't have the capital back then to purchase the property outright. So I've always been in a lease scenario and selling the business. But had I had the capital, it would have been a no-brainer to do the property itself, and then just have a long-term play there too with the investment side of it. Because good case in point, the one I just sold here in 2017. We were there for almost 6 years. And I think that since 2017 to today in 2020, that in that 3-year span, I think it's been 6 other restaurants.
Oh, wow.
It's changed that much. I don't even know what it's called now.
Wow. But the building's still there.
The building's still there,
Yeah.
and they're still getting a rent check
Exactly.
from somebody. They're finding somebody to go in there and do it. So,
Yeah.
That's definitely the ideal path if you have the capital to do it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never, and it intrigued me when you mentioned investing in restaurants and bars, because that was one area where I just never had interest in. It always seemed very high risk. I didn't know anything, didn't know anything about that. It would have no particular niche there or magic to bring to the table or anything like that. So I've just never looked into it at all. But I always have enjoyed, renting people homes, multifamily apartments. That has treated me very well through the years. The idea that you can, own someone else's home, whether it's 2 or 3 or 10 or 15, homes in one building under one roof, and then rent them out to families, and people need a place to live, and if you can buy it at a good rate and then cash flow it, and then 10 or 15 years later, I mean, usually you have a pretty good amount of appreciation. There's a lot to real estate that I really like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think real estate is it's certainly the number one investment for me overall in my whole portfolio, without a doubt, is real estate. And I think that, with the popularity of Airbnb, which I have a couple Airbnbs, but it's really overshadowed that model that you're talking about of the long-term leasing. I mean, that thing is age-old, tried and true.
Yep.
Great way to build your wealth is purchase a property, lease it out, get yourself some good renters.
Yeah, exactly. Key.
Funny stories. I started that process with, even in my college days, I had left to go intern, but I still owned the house that I lived in college. So I decided I was just going to lease it to my fraternity brothers. I was like, yeah, no big deal. And I remember driving into work one day, and that was this was probably 2006, 7. So I still listened to, FM radio.
Yeah.
And listened to the morning show with these guys, the morning guys. And I heard a familiar voice call into the radio, and the segment that the morning guys was running was, tell us about your crazy weekend. And I recognized the voice of a guy calling in, and he's talking about how they threw some guy through a wall, and they let the dogs through the house, and just basically how they destroyed this house. Come to find out, it was one of the guys from college, and they were at my rental property house. Yeah.
You heard them on the radio bragging about how they ruined this house, and it was your house.
So imagine me calling these college kids at 6:30 in the morning, like,
oh my goodness,
losing my mind. So anyway, that getting back to what I was talking about is finding good renters and reliable renters, and it's just a brilliant model. And and it doesn't have to be a scenario too to where I think an approach that gets lost is that people think that they need to be able to charge their renters a value where they're making really good like they're really raking it in, and this is life changing. I've never taken that approach. It's like, no, get good people in and charge them really reasonable rates.
Yeah.
Have a little bit enough to carry over for damages and upkeep, to where you're not going in the red on it. But that model is just proven, and but again, for maybe some valid reasons, Airbnb has really taken over, and that's kind of like the hot ticket. I think it's a brilliant model. I love it.
Yeah,
the long term rental is definitely tried and true.
Yeah. So, are your Airbnbs in town? The reason I asked that, I know sometimes. Well, there was some talk in Nashville. What was this? Maybe about a year ago, with Nashville changing some of the laws on Airbnb, and that was really going to affect people that had Airbnbs in Davidson County. So are yours local like that, or are they out of town? What types of Airbnbs are working well for you?
So I started this search, my wife and I, 3 years ago. We wanted to do it wasn't the beginning of the Airbnb avalanche here in Nashville, but it was definitely still somewhat in its early stages. So I had that exact concern when I was talking to her, is that because we had just seen how it happened in New York, with New York passing really stringent laws, because all the hotels there, they have a tremendous amount of influence with the tax revenue that they're generating there. They've got a lot of influence over city council and different political organizations there. So they actually put a law out to where they restricted it and made it really tough to do. I said, when that, because I'm in commercial construction as well, and I know the volume of hotels that are moving in here, I see that influence rising in this area.
Interesting.
So I told my wife, and we looked at multiple places in Nashville, but I couldn't get that out of my brain, that looming issue of getting hit with restrictions. So I said, why don't we just go outside the box and try and find something, an hour out that's in a really nice area that can kind of be a retreat for people here in Nashville. As the city grows, they want to go out.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking out. We went to Hendersonville, but they were tough, on Old Hickory Lake. They're not overly friendly, and it wasn't the atmosphere that we were looking for. So we actually went out to Center Hill Lake.
Oh, nice.
And the value that we could get out there 3 years ago, it's picked up a tremendous amount in the last 3 years, but the value there versus the scenery and the escape and the atmosphere was just no question. It's like, I can't get enough property out here. So we started, we bought our first place there 3 years ago, and that thing has just been incredible. And then it's just grown from there. There was a little scare, when COVID hit, because we started seeing a tremendous amount of cancellations coming through. But that sort of stopped after about 2 weeks there in March, where people started figuring it out. And if anything, it ballooned to where we've done more revenue this year than we have the previous 2 years.
Wow.
Because of there's more people that are, if they can't get on a flight and they can't fly to the Bahamas and they can't fly to the Caribbean, they're like, okay, let's load the family up and let's go to a mountain house over a lake.
Makes total sense.
And so that we were really blessed and fortunate that that's how it turned out.
Yeah, there was that 2 weeks. See, that tracks exactly with, we used to do sheds, and my in-laws still do sheds. And they had this is in Lancaster, they had a 2 week stretch that got quiet. And then it was they got so busy, like busier than, I think they're busier than basically ever. So it seems to track with how people were handling this COVID thing. It hit, no one knows what's going on. There's a couple of weeks, oh crap, you're pulling out of everything. And then if you can, things that have to do with getting out, an Airbnb, camper. My neighbor and another friend now have bought these little campers, like 18, 20-foot campers. I think their mortgage or the loan payment on is like $200 a month, and they're charging like $150 a night.
Yeah.
And this camper is out, man. It is so busy. And the other friend who just got him, he rented his out for a month for like $2,500 for the month. Again, his payment on it for that month is $200. So it's interesting how something like COVID and just the change of time and like the different trends that come through with the passing of time, but also technology. Back in the day, this renting the camper thing wouldn't have really worked, because who would have connected? How would you found the people? But now there's apps for it. I forget what it's called, but
sure,
it's like the Airbnb of campers.
Yeah, my best friend in Atlanta rents his swimming pool out. Rents it by the hour. And he called me bragging, and like last month, I think in August, he made like $2,500 just renting it out to random people who come in, and it's like, it's charged like $50 an hour, and people would come and just say, yeah, I'll take it all day.
Yeah, I love that. I think it was Fadi as well from the gym, who has been on the podcast, the chief investment officer of Nashville's pension fund, just kind of talking through some ideas in real estate. And one of the things that he has looking at, I don't think he's done it, but where you build a development and you have apartments up, the second level and up, and then on the first level you have commercial.
Yeah, mixed use residential.
Mixed use, and then you sell off the apartments on the top, but build in so that they take care of the maintenance for the whole building. And when you sell them off, you've now paid off the entire building, and now you have these commercial units on the first floor that is basically free, and it just kicks off cash forever. Such a great model, because commercial is, the best property I ever owned had, I think it was 5 units commercial, and then 8 units residential. And that's something about that mixture, man. That it honestly was a cash machine.
Yeah.
It was great. So commercial, if you can get those leases structured properly, like triple net leases are a gift from God.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hence why I wanted to do this with my company in my current office. It's like, hey, I got an idea. Why don't I found us a great place. You guys just write me a rent check, triple net.
Yeah.
It's like a no-brainer.
Exactly.
And
Southern Wall Systems, that's what you do, right? That's your day job.
that's my day job.
Okay. What is that?
So I'll give you a little backstory. While I was doing all these restaurant and bars and things like that, it's funny because I've had this dual life of I've always been in construction, and my role in the bars was the build out and the design and creativity part of it, but the operations and data. And so I've always done construction on the side, and I landed a role with a mid-sized general contractor in Atlanta. They did about $250 million a year, pretty mid-level general contractor back there, and was with them for 5 or 6 years. And one of my subcontractors was Southern Wall Systems, and really, really great company, down to earth, like good old boys, just reliable, great company. And a guy I'd worked with in the GC world said, "Hey, we're thinking about opening an office in Nashville." He's like, "I know you got some ties there. Don't you own a bar there?" And I was like, "Yeah," because I had the bar going, but I still lived in Atlanta, even though I had the bar here in Nashville.
And at the time, and Southern Wall Systems was also based in Atlanta, and the company you're working for was in Atlanta.
Right.
Got it.
So you're like, what are your thoughts on opening up a Nashville branch? We've got this one job there. You go up there, you run it, and just open slate. Go and, if you want to do $10 million a year, great. If you want to do $30 million, great. If you want to do $2 million, that's great. Obviously just cover costs and start it up. So that was in 2013, the beginning of 2013. So fast forward, it's just progressed into. Well, let me back up just a little bit there. We were just in that 2013 area, just an exterior plaster. Like we would do like stucco and ephes and a couple things. So we were great. We were really an industry leader at that time when I came on. But one of the things that I was tasked with is not only developing the business and growing the business, but also trying to refine our production and what our services were, really refining our services and honing in on them. So that's really what I focused on, and it really took off. And we got to this point to where we were really the best, and I think we still are, at traditional construction. So we were left with this decision to make. It's like, okay, we really think that we've maximized our ability for speed, quality, service to the client. What's the next thing? We're, instead of looking at the nuts and bolts even further, it's like, what's the next thing? So that's when it spawned off into prefabrication, where we're actually, we opened up on a 30-acre facility. We've got 2 plants now dedicated to building walls. Basically what we did in the past on the physical job site, we're now doing in a warehouse environment, controlled climate environment, and building full wall assemblies and shipping them to jobs all across the country. So we're really, what we're doing now is just basically being a full envelope subcontractor, where our clients will call us, whether it be a developer, general contractor, direct owner. That's basically, hey, we've got this building. Sometimes they start out with a napkin sketch. We've got this building. Design the envelope for me. They may have an architect on board that wants to give some advice, like, I want to use 60% masonry, 40% glass. Let's come up with a design there. So that's what we do, is we take those from our clients and then we make it real. Like we put it and design it and lay it out, and then actually go and build it and erect it.
So are they using Southern Wall Systems to build the entire building, or no? You're just supplying the wall panels,
just the
helping
wall
with
panels.
the design.
So
of the wall panels.
The next step for us is on a general. It is more doing the full building.
Okay.
So, but we're just in the phase right now of just being specific and trying to be the best that there is in the country at the particular exterior. The shell of the building is what we're trying to be the best at.
I see. And are you selling and this is the world that I'm not familiar with, because your jobs are commercial, industrial, office type buildings, high rise type buildings. Is that correct?
Yeah. We've done the Margaritaville Hotel, the Tri-Brand Hotel, some off Printers Alley, the Hyatt House. So a lot of these big buildings downtown.
Okay.
We were a part of. So definitely more on the higher commercial level, but we also prefabricate Chick-fil-A's. I mean,
Do you really?
Yeah. Well, we took Chick-fil-A's old wood frame construction model and introduced a steel frame load bearing prefab system that's totally changed their approach. I mean, we're turning buildings over. What used to take them 4.5 to 5 months, we now do in 6 days. We're able to stand the walls up full glass, put a roof on. Yeah, it's really cool to watch.
Wow, that is cool. Coming from a prefab, pre-manufactured background myself, that is fascinating. And on these high-rise buildings, you're selling just the wall panels, and then the builder is using you for just the wall panels, and then that kind of clicks in with the other frame parts of the building.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we fasten back to the structure, and we're progressing in that area. I mean, we have done structures where it's called a load bearing style system, where we're running the interior walls and corridor walls and things like that along with the exterior.
I see.
But that's really what we're trying to. We see where the industry's going. The industry's going in prefab. I mean, it really is, because the benefits are just tremendous.
Yes.
That system is not. I mean, it's not only quality control and speed and schedule certainty and those elements, but also safety, and having guys that are no longer hanging off the sides of buildings. They're now standing on a warehouse floor.
Yes.
And able to do what would have been a really difficult task. Plus, it helps tremendously, too, where we need a lot less highly skilled labor. Guys that have a 10 and 12-year track record of hanging off the sides and being able to apply this highly specialized system. Now we can get, younger guys that have no experience and teach them there on the floor in a safe way.
Yes.
And waste reduction. There's so many, that's where the industry's certainly going.
Yes.
And we're trying to be on the edge of it.
Yeah.
And take advantage.
Yeah. Division of labor is a wonderful thing. So you run the Nashville, you're the vice president of Nashville, basically. You run the Nashville market?
That was up until 2 years ago. Now it's company, full company.
Oh, okay.
So I'm actually a partner in the company.
Okay.
We have an executive team that's comprised of 5 individuals, and our reach is, all the way up into New Jersey, all the way out to Texas. We've done several projects out in Colorado, been in discussions with several clients in California. It's a little tougher market. It circles back to our political discussion about what they want there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a pretty big reach, and we're expanding pretty rapidly.
Yeah, congratulations. Are the other VPs and partners executive team in Atlanta, or are they here now?
Everybody's in Atlanta.
Okay.
One guy's out in Nashville.
Okay.
That was one of the discussions that we had early on when they presented this with me, because up until then I was almost like my own satellite arm where I controlled everything. It's like, how much do we want to do for the year? What projects do we want? What clients do we want to work with? And when they talk with me about taking that same approach that I had in Nashville and applying it company-wide and bringing it in as a partner, and that was the first question I asked. I was like, do you guys want me to move back to Atlanta? Because my wife's whole family's here. Like, good luck talking to Marissa.
Okay. Yeah.
Explaining to her that. They're like, no, man, with technology now, and this was pre-COVID, but technology now, Zoom meetings, we've been doing those together. Like every Monday morning we have an executive meeting over Zoom, and it's been pretty seamless. Now I do travel a tremendous amount. Now too, because I'm more on the business development side. So I'm constantly going around the country and meeting with different clients.
But the remote thing works. We're not about to lose you to Atlanta. At least the information you have at hand at this point.
No, I don't think so.
Hard left turn with your experience then in high-rise buildings. Have you do you have some thoughts on? Excuse the train in the background. We do have a morning train that rolls through here that gets a little
I
noisy on
love
the
the
podcast.
feel you got going.
Right?
Man. This is really cool.
Yeah, it's very genuine in here.
Yeah.
We have our own
Raw.
train even, exactly. How do you explain the way the towers came down at 9/11? It may sound like a really weird question. So apparently there's a movement like 9/11 truthers, which I didn't really know much about, never paid much attention to. Um, and then just more recently, it apparently is odd the way the towers came down. Do you have any thoughts on that, knowing commercial construction? And I don't know if you know anything about some of the questions there, but apparently a tower should not fall with the plane flying into it. And furthermore, if it would fall from the plane, it should not fall straight down as if it was like, what's the term when they like exploded on purpose? They bring down buildings with like these explosives. I forget
Planned
what that's.
demolition.
Yeah, planned demolition. The way those towers fell, and certainly Building 7, which wasn't even hit, they fell like it was a planned demolition, which is very weird. Do you know anything about that?
So I would purely be speculating based on my experience in the commercial world. I don't know specific, and I haven't done any research into it, but I can tell you that. So on your new construction builds where you've got, a cast-in-place concrete structure, and you also, from what I remember of those buildings, they also had steel construction as well in concert with the CIP, cast-in-place concrete structure. So with those steel elements, generally and typically, they have to be fireproofed. It's a spray insulation that goes on these different members. So in theory, again, this is pure speculation. I haven't really researched it, but in theory, a collision like that with jet fuel on fire could, the impact of the jet could scrape away a lot of that fire safing on impact. Then it makes the steel susceptible to that high temperature and melting. And then once one floor goes, that's when you get what looked like the pancake selective demolition approaches. One floor collapse at a structure, and that weight compounded, and then pancakes all the way down. I can see why there's interest there. It definitely, I remember watching that. I was going to freshman year econ at Georgia Southern. I remember watching it and I was so shocked that they actually collapsed. I thought it was just the top floors were just going to burn up and the structure stay in place. But I guess it proved that it is possible that weight of each individual floor, once the structural is compromised there and it comes crashing down, that it can't support that impact down from floors. But that's speculating. Yeah.
And that could very well be. I mean, I am the least expert here whatsoever. It's just from what I was reading, it's difficult to explain the way the towers fell, because just with the laws of physics and everything, like when you drop two rocks off a cliff and one rock drops straight into the lake below and the other rock bounces off the side a couple of times, the energy that gets absorbed from that rock bouncing off the side of the cliff wall, that uses some of the energy and it slows down the fall. I mean, it's just natural. I mean, we even kids know this when they throw the rock. They don't know why exactly it happens, but that's just the way it is. And the towers fell at just like a split, like very, very close to the rate that they would fall if it was a free fall, which just does not make any sense at all, you know? So I don't know exactly like what the conspiracies are, if that's what it is, like behind it, or what some of the reasoning is of what would be the motives and who would have pre-rigged it, and I don't really know much about that. It's just the way the towers fell. I never paid much attention to, but as I looked into it, it was kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, it was definitely strange to see that. I personally, at the time, had no clue that they could collapse the way that they collapsed.
Yeah. I know there's some that would say you're right that you had no clue they would collapse that way, because buildings don't collapse that way and there's something else going on there. I know for sure there are certain people that would say that. I don't know what I think. I was just curious what your thoughts on how that came down.
Yeah.
I try not to get into the conspiracies too much, but there's plenty going around these days.
Oh man, I'm reading. I'm on a John Ronson kick right now, and I'm reading. I just finished up the psychopath test. Now I'm reading them. So
what's this with John Ronson?
Yeah,
who's that?
He's an investigative journalist, author.
Oh yeah,
and Tim Grohl actually recommended his book, The Psychopath Test, which was really interesting and so good that I'm a really slow reader.
Me too.
I take a lot of time and I make notes and highlight and then try and think about, and I'll reread pages over and over. That book, The Psychopath, I read in one day. Even Marissa, my wife, came in. She's like, "Are you done with that book?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like,
"It's a couple 100-page book, or how?
It's close to 300, but I finished it up. I mean, I was that engaged with it. I mean, I started on Saturday morning and just by 6, 7 o'clock was wrapping it up. I was like,
I'll have to check it out. What's the premise of the book?
It's really so his overall, what he's trying to understand is the conspiracy theory that the world is ran by psychopaths. Basically, CEOs and world leaders and politicians have that gene or genetic makeup that's closely related to psychopaths. There's like this test, the psychopath test, that I can't remember who the founder was, Al somebody, but he created this test of like 30 questions and 20 traits to figure out which of how close you are, and the higher you score on it, the closer you are to being like a psychopath. Like the most extreme psychopaths on the planet scored like 29 or 30.
Okay.
We're up in that range, and he goes into not only examining, the serial killers, the people who have absolutely no empathy, but also the correlation between CEOs that just can go into a town and totally shut down a manufacturing plant and lay off 1,000 people.
Yes.
And laugh about how their stock price shot up.
Yes.
And how those traits are closely similar.
Ooh, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, it was really, I really enjoyed it. And, what started this conversation is you talking about conspiracy theories, and that led me to his book he wrote back in 2003 called Them.
Okay.
And it's tracking, I'm only a couple chapters in, but it's tracking, you heard of the Bilderberg Group? I think Joe Rogan's talked about them a couple times.
I haven't. Bilderberg Group?
Yeah, supposedly. So the theory is that there's this group of people that are basically running the world. They're going around. They're creating the wars. They're starting wars. They're choosing. They're manipulating the world banks and. So, yeah.
Is it the deep state, or this is a different group?
I haven't gotten to where he's made that comparison right now. In the first few chapters, it's really just he's sort of tracking them. He's finding all these conspiracy theorists and trying to figure out where they're getting their sources from, why they came up with these wild conspiracies.
I see.
Where's their evidence? So he's compiling it now to lead us to
that. Yeah, interesting. I'm probably going to get both of those books. They sound very fascinating.
Yeah.
I was listening to Joe Rogan's recent episode with, I can't remember the guest's name, but it was on, the guy's an expert in narcissism. It's pretty fascinating because apparently there's at least two types of narcissism. And one is what you think of, like very self-centered people that are just everything's about them and all of this. And there's another type of narcissism that I'd never heard of before, which is pretty interesting. And it's like, I forget what the term is, but it's almost like closet narcissism, where it's like, you're living in your mom's basement, but you just know you're the best. And everyone it's on everyone else that they haven't figured out that you're the best yet. And like, you just have like 1,000 Instagram followers, but if people could truly see who you were and would understand you for your awesomeness, you would have like a couple million followers.
Right.
But they just haven't discovered you yet, and that's on them. And you're still the best. It's kind of fascinating, like what we can do in our minds and justify and believe about ourselves and the world. And it's intriguing. That stuff is intriguing to me. It's a little scary.
It is, and to me, it's super fascinating. I just finished a couple weeks ago Robert Greene's book, The Laws of Human Nature. And that's another really fascinating. It's really dense. It's not as easy of a read as John Ronson is, but I'm really intrigued by just human nature in general of like why certain people act the way that they act.
Yeah.
And how I'm rationalizing it too is like I really think if I can spot these things out, that it's not just having trivia knowledge, it's also being able to take advantage of it in work life, social life, being able to spot. And plus too, one benefit that I've seen come out of it that I didn't anticipate by any stretch was that I find myself having more empathy for people. Spotting the guy who's an asshole at the gas station and just being able to identify now is like, that's not a me problem. That's him. That guy's just to reflect. He's having a just awful, because like I haven't had that look up until now and get that understanding. So I had to get defensive. And so it's just really fascinating to me. And I think that I'm seeing some benefits that I didn't anticipate by researching further on why people act the way that they act.
Yes, that is interesting. I've been intrigued by just human nature for a long time, and I don't know that much about it, but anytime I can learn a little bit about it, I'm always interested in it. One of the things, my mom raised us as a single mom. My dad died when I was 10, and I have a younger brother, so I'm the oldest son. I have 2 older sisters, but I was a very difficult kid to raise. And she let us finally get horses when I was 13, and I'd wanted to be a cowboy since I was a little kid and wanted a horse at 10, 11, 12. Finally at 13, she let us have them, and her thought process there was, and it was ours. Like, we picked out the horse, we bought it, one we trained, a few others we bought and sold, and those types of things. And it was our world, man. As a young teenage boy, like, it was 100% us. And, we found a horse trailer to buy and all of this. And I mean, she paid for it and she let us do whatever pretty much we wanted to do. It was our world. We rode him. We wanted to ride him. We fed him. We took care of him. All of this. And her thought process, which I think is really, really brilliant, is for basically a young troubled teen, working through all of these life issues, I needed a world to control. Like, I needed a part of this world that I could control. I could make the decisions. I could, really make my own decisions and create my own world and be in charge of something. I needed to, not dominate, but I needed to have dominion over something, And I think I think of that when I see someone who just has like a very quick reaction on the road to, like, road rage. It's so quick and rampant and everything. Here's what I think part of that is. I think part of that is their life feels out of control. They don't have much control. They just feel like they're part of the system and they don't have much control about what's going on in their life and their dominion and those types of things. And so when something triggers that on the road, that's one thing they can control. Like, they can lash out. They can honk the horn. They can, flip someone off or scream or holler. Like, the outsized reaction that you sometimes see, and you don't see it much here at all, at least I don't in Nashville, but it does exist out there, where like the outsized reaction to someone else's driving decision doesn't match. There's something else going on.
Sure.
And I think sometimes it's because they don't have much control, and that's one thing where they can lash out, and exhibit some amount of some amount of authority over someone else. I don't know. It's a working theory.
And I think it's even worse too in being in a car too, because if you really break it down and think about it, we're driving these steel death traps at high speeds. So we've just gotten used to it and complacent because we've just done it for so long. But I still think in our subconscious acknowledges that it's a dangerous scenario. So we're already in this heightened state. So
that's
really
interesting.
it's really easy when you're that close and on edge to snap and go hyper aggressive. I've got it.
Yeah.
And I've had to develop mechanisms to treat it when it happens, through breathing and through trying to just think, I circle back. One of the things that I would do is just putting my hand on my heart and just thinking to myself, this is a little morbid, but just thinking to myself, I was like, when this thing goes, it's all over. That's the only thing that's holding. So I go through these different mechanisms to try and bring me back down from that state, because I'm still subject to it. I still acknowledge, like, if I get cut off or somebody's driving too slow, like, I know that I acknowledge I'm in this hyper state, but I think that I'm in the minority. I think that the vast amount of people don't acknowledge what state they're in and just go pure raw emotion and aggression. It's just not a healthy habit.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, we were at a Tony Robbins event years ago, a few of my friends, and one of the things that he talked about was just as an attitude of, I guess, gratitude, like placing your hand over your heart and just being grateful that that heart is still pumping. And he had some breathing kind of meditation exercises go with it as well. But it's so true, man. I mean, that's the single thing that I'm probably the most concerned of with contracting COVID-19 is the potential lingering effects on some people's hearts. I don't know about if certain people are susceptible to that type of thing, because apparently it can tear some of the muscles and then you sort of have diced muscles on your heart. So I don't know if that happens more if people already have heart issues or other pre-existing conditions. I'm really not sure. Everyone that I know that got COVID-19 is fine and everything's good and their heart hasn't been torn to shreds. But that, I just think about that a lot. Like that's a single organism that needs to be taken care of the most. I mean, when that thing stops, it's over. That in your brain, feeding that brain and keeping that thing sharp is so critical.
Yeah, so it goes back to my morning routine of just making sure that you're grateful. I read a funny quote from Einstein yesterday that said, there's two ways that you can look at life and go through your life, and one is that nothing's a miracle, and the other is that everything's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's crazy the impact of that, of thinking about that notion early in the morning and just acknowledging that, how I really think it puts me in this mode of not worrying so much about the things that are outside of my control.
Yes.
The opposite path to that, and it's really easy to forget, is just being caught up in the madness and the media and everything that we've touched on today. Mm-hmm. It's like, which path do you want to take? And I'm doing everything I can to try and take that path of looking at everything as a miracle. I mean, the fact that we're here at this point in time, what I strongly feel is the greatest country on the planet. Mm-hmm. And with the opportunity and everything that I've been blessed with, it's like, how can you not be grateful?
Yeah, it's so true. Like the fact that we can be sitting here on a Wednesday morning, mid-morning, and getting to know each other. And then later we're going to go to CrossFit maybe. And like, here's water, here's coffee. Want more coffee? Heck, you want some bourbon? Like all this, like we have air to breathe and the sun's shining and a train just went by. And it's like, that is when you stop and think it's all these things that happen on a daily basis, every day, all day. I mean, these things were like designed by, I think, a creator God, and we get to enjoy it. And a lot of it just passes over us. So often because we're so caught up in like everything that's going on or who knows what. Like we have all these distractions that we just allow to be built into our life.
Yeah, it's amazing that with everything that you just said and everything that we have here, it's like the fact that even you and I still have to make a conscious effort to acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. Because it's so easy to take it for granted. It's so easy to get caught up in the news cycle that, or you, especially somebody like me, is you could be grateful, so happy, and then somebody cuts you off, and it's like we got this natural reaction to want to go back in there and be defensive. So it takes effort to get back into it. It's amazing, but it's human nature. It's just the way people are built.
Yep.
So it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. The Psychopath Test. Is that a new book? Does it talk about Trump?
I don't think it is a new book, but I don't think that he talks about Trump in it. I'm trying to see if there's a correlation to any traits that he mentions. I don't think that there's a direct connection there.
He's got to be a narcissist a little bit, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that.
But anybody can take that and look at the 20 characteristic traits and apply a good chunk of them.
The psychopath
to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're saying to Trump or to any individual? You're saying
certainly to Trump.
Oh, got it.
Yep. The cool thing is too is you're reading that, and then I would imagine you're probably going to go in the same place that I went, is immediately looking to see, man, am I a psychopath?
Yeah.
Well, one of the cool lines from one of the psychologists that's quoted in the book says, if you're reading this book right now and you're wondering whether or not you're a psychopath, that means you're not.
Oh, really?
Because a psychopath will generally read that and think, yeah, this is about totally, people nowhere near me.
Interesting.
Like, I'm not a psychopath
Okay, that's
at
good
all.
to know. Yeah.
So just
That's
asking,
helpful.
the fact that you asked the question is positive.
Good.
Yeah.
Did you see Trump? He is apparently he's over COVID-19. He's back out on the trail. He was saying something on Twitter about running into the crowds and kissing everybody. Can you pull that up, Andrew? Oh, right here. Play that 1 second. You have the volume on? I feel so powerful. I walk into that audience and kiss everyone. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women, and I'll just give you a big fat kiss. I mean, did we figure out if that's real, Andrew?
I think it might be.
You think it might be real?
I think it might be.
I mean,
I
that
think it's
is
even a problem, the fact that we even question whether or not,
Yeah.
it's still, in my personal opinion, if I heard the president and saw something like that, what I would have thought 5 years ago is, that's fake. That's nuts, ridiculous.
Yeah.
It would make something so silly. But now we watch it, it's like, I'm probably 90% sure that that's
Yeah.
if not 100.
Yeah.
I'm right there. It's like we've reduced our expectations.
Yes.
To this level that is really concerning to me.
Mhm.
I'm more worried about younger people and what they're witnessing. Those that are just coming, those are at an impressionable age. Their frontal cortex isn't fully developed, and they're trying to sort through this world and figure things out. And then here we have the leader of the free world with this kind of attitude and characteristics. It's like, man, what's the new normal look like moving forward?
Yeah, it is a great question. And it's not just affecting America, because you touched on it, in the leader of the free world. And what I think a lot of people would argue is the greatest country in the world. And the leader of the free world is acting like that. So it's not just the effect on America and our younger generation, it's the effect on the younger generation in other countries as well.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's...
We've witnessed him say things that I would get mad at my 6-year-old nephew for saying. Like,
for sure.
I don't. I mean, I could talk for hours about the problems that I have with it, and then it's on both sides too. I mean, I can go through and find some new norms on the Democratic side that really concern me, really bother me. I mean, the thing that really sticks out to me, and it appears to be overlooked by a lot of our liberal friends, is the Nancy Pelosi whole salon ordeal.
Yes.
So I wasn't as outraged at the fact that, it's bad enough she's supported these laws that have shut down these small businesses, really crushing small business owners, especially with the single mother who owned that particular salon. And she goes in there and she gets gets her hair done and whatever, while everybody else, the normal quote unquote citizens, don't have that luxury. That was bad. I'm like, yeah, that's really bad. But what kicked the avalanche off for me was how she handled it. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry I was set up. Like, okay, this single mother, you're going to blame it on her?
Oh, I didn't know she did that.
Yeah, she came out and was like, yeah, I apologize for being set up. It's like, what new normal do we have now?
Yes.
To where our politicians are blaming innocent small business owners, single mothers and she was viciously attacked by, the left in that area with threats on her children and things like that.
The business owner?
Yeah. She took in a lot of threats.
Because they genuinely felt like she set up Pelosi?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. That's so awful. Have you ever seen the TV show Veep?
Yeah.
It's on HBO a little bit. That Pelosi moment in that salon doing that crazy thing where no one else can get their hair done, but you get to go in and get the hair done is such a Veep moment. I mean, for people that haven't watched that TV show, it's like this, I forget her character's name now. Shoot, it's I can't think of it. But anyhow, she plays the character extremely
Louise Dreyfus.
well. Louise Dreyfus
Yeah,
is the
Julia Louise Dreyfus.
is the actual
Yeah.
lady's name, but
That's
the
the
character.
actress.
What's the character's name in the show Veep? I can't think of it. Anyhow, she can't get out of her own way, basically. And the show is pretty funny. I'll give it that. It's a lot of chuckles. But it was such a Veep moment because it's like, you can't, this is not something, this is painful to watch. Like, this is
It's
not
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Yes.
I would hope that rational common sense, that whatever you want to call them, silent majority, whoever, I would hope that the majority of Americans watch that and it bothers them and it makes them uncomfortable. And I still hold on to that, thinking that that's how we are.
Yeah.
I really don't think that the majority of people can watch that or watch Pelosi and say, 100%, we're backing you. I really think that it makes us sort of cringe.
Yes.
But, how close are we to losing that to where,
Yeah.
I don't know.
How close does that become the new normal, and the next generation doesn't cringe as much, and the one after
And
that
just accepts it.
accepts it. And then that's
washed.
bad.
Then
That's
it's
a real
bad.
bad situation.
It's bad, and we lose basic civility.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be a doomsday theorist here, but the signs are on the wall to anybody that's really paying attention, is that this isn't a sustainable path. That
Totally agree.
And I think it may have started pre-Trump. I think we were getting some signs on it in the later stages of the Obama era. But I think Trump just totally exacerbated it and just really made it just
he did.
powder
And
keg.
what the hardcore Trump supporters would say to you is that he is playing a game, and for him, he's smart enough to know what needs to be done to win the game, and he's got it rigged, and that's not who he really is. He's just performing and doing the performance that he needs to do in order to win the election and put this country back on track.
And I would say at what cost?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to go in his direction in this election, but it's not a vote placed out of 100% support of character and moral authority. It's none of that. It's purely policy based.
Mm-hmm.
I have some concerns with Biden.
Yeah.
And his overall health. I mean, that's just, that's not me being mean or being way hard right or nothing. There's none of that. I mean, it's just common sense. I have some real concerns there. And I don't know. I get it. I do see some legitimacy in those claims that some hardcore Trump supporters will say, is that he's just playing a game. He's telling it like it is. But like it circles back to the new normal. I don't want that to be the normal. I don't want the normal to be to where he's just playing a game and riling people up. And that we need to be better than that. We need to be a better example. Our politicians do.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I wouldn't take all that away from Trump. I also don't think he's that smart. I don't think I think some of these things is he's just doing the spur of the moment. I think a lot of people have a hard time keeping up with him. I mean, he tweeted last week that the negotiations were off. That didn't go very well. And half a day later, he's basically trying to get him back on track as quick as possible. And that wasn't necessarily a game. It was just, well, that was the wrong decision. So let me change course there.
And what do even further, one of the other things that bothered me was his tweet about the Supreme Court nomination and how he's picking her to basically rule in his favor if the election goes to the Supreme Court.
Oh, I know he outright said that.
It's like that poor lady, like she did a great job of handling it. They showed it on Power Lunch. Of course, I'm watching the CNBC, but they showed a snippet of her and how she approached that direct question. But where I'm going with it is that he cannot get it. It's almost there's a degree of him wanting to lose this thing on purpose with his actions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's just delusional to his actions or if he's subconsciously making an effort he knows he doesn't want to go again. I don't know. There's just so many unknown questions, but it's just not rational thoughts. It's like, dude, can you just take your phone, just drop it for a month?
Yeah.
I mean, just go to the debate, have a civil debate. I mean, you're going against a guy who's clearly got cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I would just let him talk. Like, tell
Yeah.
me what your plan is and let him fumble on himself like he's done in every interview he's done.
That is such a great point. And Trump is smart. You would think Trump has to be smart enough to acknowledge that. And his advisors have to be smart enough to acknowledge that. Which, by the way, Biden did have 2 surgeries in the 80s. I don't know if you knew that. On his brain. 2 brain surgeries.
Didn't he have an aneurysm?
He had an aneurysm, and it was two surgeries. And his doctor, of course, now says that has no impact on his cognitive abilities. But, I mean, there's enough of clips where you don't know what Biden is trying to say. And so, to your point, wouldn't the better strategy have been to allow Biden to just talk and let him talk himself basically out of the job? I will say Biden performed way better at that VP debate on the presidential debate than I thought he was going to. But Trump just would not let him alone. I mean, it was obnoxious.
I made it in maybe 8 minutes, and then it's just unbearable. It was uncomfortable, embarrassing. I really thought, and I had the same expectations you did. I thought that, seeing the videos of Biden where he's having trouble putting together coherent thoughts, it's like he's talking, but when you try and stitch these things together, there's not a lot of rationale behind it. It's really concerning.
Yep.
So I thought the plan was, like you said, would have been to go in there and just let the guy talk himself way out of that job.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows decline, but it's like Trump gave him this lifeline of, no, I'm going to be rude and interrupt you to where all the focus is on me, not the fact that you can't put a coherent thought together, just how much of a jerk I am trying to rattle you.
Yeah. I think
that's in 8 minutes. That's me.
Isn't that something?
That's the opinion I formed in 8 minutes, and apparently
it went on for 90. It went on for 90. I mean, but I think this would be pretty funny. I think this would be ironic if Trump lost the election, and a year or 2 or 3 from now, it actually kind of leaked out that he didn't want that job. You know what I mean? He'd had 4 years. It was enough. He was ready to go back to the Trump organization and do his thing. I mean, and you know what? I wouldn't entirely blame him.
The theory, and I really think that it's a strong theory, is that Trump never intended to be president. I think it was more political because he had some dabbling of that before 2016, where he had talked about it and threatened it. I mean, there's even a clip of him in the 80s talking about it, just joking around.
Yes.
So I think it was more, the theory goes like this, that it was more of a push to get recognition for his shows, get his name back out there. But the paradigm shift in his attitude was when Obama called him out at that speaking event where he said, there's one thing that I'll be that Trump will never be, and that's president. For a blatant narcissist like Trump to hear something like that, I really think it just switched his whole philosophy on it, where he's like, I'm all in. I'm going hard for this thing. But, fast forward being a president for 4 years, the theory's out there that this has been pretty tough,
Yep.
And one clip that I watched of him where he made the comment about how when he at his inauguration, him and Melania were walking up, and he looked at her and he's like, "Can you hear that? Half of them are booing." She goes, "No, they're cheering. They're cheering." He's like, "No, I'm pretty sure half are booing." So for a straight line narcissist like that, the impact that something so subtle like that can have on somebody who wasn't brought through that process of a politician. I think that there's an element there. There's some truth to that theory that he may not be overly excited about another term.
Yeah, that's interesting. The challenge that I would see with with Trump is that it would be a tough pill to swallow to lose at anything, including a re-election, particularly to Biden. So that's the one. I just wonder. That aside, I could see where he's trying to lose. If he's big enough, mature enough to be like, no, this is a loss I'm willing to accept, and later I'm going to tell people that it was a loss I'm willing to accept, and here's why. Like, I could see that. I just don't know if I don't know that he's got that in him.
I don't think he's capable of that.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that. I don't. I think that he's down the road on it. It's going to push, but maybe it has an impact more so on what punches he may have pulled. And I know he's not one for pulling punches, but things like this, that
Yes.
he may have had a little bit more conscious awareness of to try and scale back. Maybe
Yeah.
that's out the window because it's like, I want to win. Yeah, I don't want to lose to this guy that he's making these claims for, but maybe that makes him a little more reckless. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's just such an anomaly.
Yeah, he really is.
It's hard to pin on what his intentions are.
Yeah.
Not necessarily not necessarily the ideal characteristic you want
No.
if you're president.
No, it's not.
You don't know where he's coming from or what his intentions
Yes.
are.
It's a bummer that we're now even having a discussion about whether we vote the person or the policy. Like, seriously, are we asking too much to have both in this country? You know what I mean? Like, you're voting for the policy, not the person.
100%. And I've said that. It's like, and it even goes back to 2016 where it's like, man, a country of 330 plus million people, and these are the only two options that are there. I've voted for Gary Johnson in 2016. But, it's just amazing to me that there's got to be, I've heard some really cool philosophies and theories out there of different ways we can approach it, of even doing a scenario where it's like we alternate, where there's one, Republican leader and then a Democratic vice president for a 4-year term, then they switch. And, the caliber of people that you bring in the track records. And there's some really interesting theories out there on ways we could go to avoid what we're doing now. That's not, totally rewriting laws or the Constitution. It's just a modified approach for a new era that we're in.
Yeah.
That avoids a situation where we're just left having to choose between the lesser of two evils.
See, I think that's a very interesting idea. And this occurred to me in the first 3 to 5 minutes of the vice presidential debate is, could we, because they handle themselves very well, can we not just have Mike Pence and Kamala Harris go run the White House together? And not because I agree with, here's the truth. I don't know that much about either of them really. But what I would like about that is they conducted themselves very well in their debate. They had coherent thoughts. They were very articulate. They both seemed very bright. And then we would sort of have, viewpoints from both sides, if you will, and you can have those viewpoints and make decisions kind of not together because, presumably Pence would be president in that scenario and Harris VP, but you would still get input from both sides of the aisle. And a few people, just messaged me and were like, hell no, like, that's because you could never have that far left should never come close enough to the White House, those types of things. And I thought that kind of reinforced the whole reason why I think that would be a good idea to begin with, which is people are so entrenched, because there's people on the right that would think that's a terrible idea because the left shouldn't come anywhere close to the White. But there's people on the left that think the same way. And so now here we are, we're back at the same problem. Yeah, we just have to battle it out and pick one and go for it.
Never ending cycle.
It really is. Well, I want to let you out of here so you can get to the gym. You going to 11:30?
I am headed straight
Fantastic.
there.
I'm going to go there too. I'm going to have to take it a little easy. I'll probably just have to ride the bike most of the time. Yeah. But thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. I really enjoyed this. It was fun getting to know you a little bit better. We've been working out together for, I guess, a while. I don't know, a year or so since I've been more consistent now at Forte. But this was really great to have you on and hear more about what you're up to and everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything you want to leave with the listeners as you go? We have a lot of people in business and entrepreneurship and people that are interested in investments and, living deliberately and being their best, I guess, optimized humans, so to speak. Anything you want to leave with people before you go?
I don't have any quick tidbits of inspiration but I would like to maybe we set up another one sometime where we come in and really hone in on investments and strategies and different things like
That'd
that.
be fun.
I'd really love to talk to you about that. And absolutely. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, Chad, thank you very much, my man. Good luck, and we'll see you at the gym in a few minutes. That was wonderful. Yeah, appreciate it.